call has been forwarded to an automatic voice messaging.
Right to voicemail.
022202013 est on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 902220013 est ton appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hi there, my name is Scott Jewers, and I'm calling in regards to case number 2025-21595. I was calling to speak with apparently Shelley Muse. Now, I have some serious concerns about this case, and I've been calling this number several times, leaving voice messages, but also making videos online. Having very serious concerns about these officers not contacting me back, and Shelley Muse and Kurt Wallace covering up a violent sexual assault. I released serious evidence showing that they did in fact cover it up, and I still have not received a call. So I'd like to go through the times that I tried to contact and how long it's been to show you the exact extent of the fraud of Shelley Muse. Alright, it's been 1,215 days since I disclosed information to Jessica Welk about a violent sexual assault and all of the abuse. 444 days since Corporal Atwell Musquodoboit Harbour retaliated, lied about a violent sexual assault, laughed about it to my face, said he'd contact me Monday, and he has not. All of this has been already submitted to RCMP, including Shelley Muse. It has been 276. You heard me right. 276 days since I last spoke with Shelley Muse on March 13, 2025. I reported a violent sexual assault. What she did was try to use Corporal Atwell's record to try to trap me in a room with him and her, and she hasn't contacted me back since because she knew I caught her and what she was doing. Alright, and it's been 248 days since I last received a call from Kurt Wallace. So Kurt Wallace would have called me, apparently because of Shelley Muse, and never left a contact number, never said Shelley Muse's name, never used a case number or anything. And then him and Shelley Muse went back on the record and said they tried to contact me. Of course they did. That's how fraud works and operates, right? Who else could I contact? I'd have to contact Shelley Muse, and you hear me on the phone right now trying to contact him, and it goes straight to voicemail, because that's what systemic fraud is. All right? We're going to go through a detailed submission here, and I'm really going to show you something. Now, it has been 992 days since this case has been open with CRCC. That's right, after RCMP never investigated for 802 days, opened the case for 4 days, and then just closed it, never contacted me, covering up a violent sexual assault. And so, we need to go a little bit further because it's important to go over this information in the beginning. It has been 129 days since I submitted the RCMP letter with no acknowledgement from CRCC after they know they didn't report a violent sexual assault or any of this abuse. It has been 218 days since I answered the 5 pages of questions from CRCC. No response from CRCC in regards to this. 89 days since I escalated to the Minister of Public Safety, Gary Anandasangre. Sorry, dude. Never practiced that one. And NSHA. So, look at these gaps here. And I've been following up every week since with CRCC. Now, you're wondering, everybody, why all this is happening, and we're going to get into that, but I need to do a disclaimer before we go any further, because some of the content that we're going to cover here is very, very sensitive. And we're going to be talking about sexual assault and police violence and fraud, where they destroyed lives and covered up serious violence. And we're going to be talking about Nova Scotia Health Authority and their criminal misconduct and their fraud. So there are very likely other victims, but also your family members who might have reported something very serious regarding these individuals, right? And may have gone through serious abuse and not had the same kind of evidence that I had. And in such, or in so, this will be very triggering to those individuals. I know that from personal experience. Being sexually assaulted and abused like that, and then having these people cover that up like that, is very triggering. And that's what these people are weaponizing, because they are sick sex offending frauds. Right? So your family members were likely subjected to dirty cops like Shelley Muse and Kurt Wallace, Jessica Welk, right? Or these other dirty people that we're going to talk about. And in that, their experiences are very real. So I want you to know, listen, I understand some of this might be stressful, this might be very difficult to deal with, and I understand that. So if you're feeling bad, just hit it on pause. You're getting stressed out, just breathe, understand that there is help, there is support. And if you need help, you can reach out to some of these parties. I'll put some phone numbers up on the board here. I want to make a promise to all of you. I promise each of you victims out there, I will deal with these sex offenders and I will find you justice. Now, we're going to need to end this call. I'm going to need to call back because I only get 5 minutes per interaction here. So I got to call back. All right.
Is on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 902202001 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hi there, this is Scott George calling again. My phone number is 902-220-9106. Again, I'm calling to report that your officers covered up a violent sexual assault, massive abuse. What we're going to start off by doing is back on July 10, 2025, I actually released a video. It was an hour and a half long, going through this fraudulent report that Corey Burchell and Trevor Allen filed with CRCC, showing they never even mentioned the sexual assault. They never contacted me, waited 802 days, and then just opened the case for 4 days and closed it, called the officers involved and coached them. And they called me just a liar. I mean, I went through detailed records showing how they claimed I said the officers called me gay and all this stuff. It was all made up, showing how Corporal Stevens actually defrauded the entire process. I would go look at it. It's very detailed and very well done. But what we're going to do now is that in that case, they tried to defer to March 13, 2023, when Nova Scotia Health Authority retaliated again because they knew they were facing serious charges and had me arrested. So they all tried to say, look, he was arrested again. He must be something wrong with him. Something, right? And then didn't include any evidence in the record whatsoever. So then we need to go back to what actually happened when I was first arrested, August 2nd, 2023, don't we? So I have all this evidence about massive abuse coming from Irving Shipbuilding, but also the police, right? So my phone's GPS location was set to 9330 Highway number 7, Stillwater, Nova Scotia. Now, when you check the land registration dates, you see that they... Not only that they match these Emmett contracts, which is associated with Cambridge Analytica, but also they match the start date for the HRP Chief of Police, Dan Kinsella. And so I went through serious abuse at the shipyard and at Irving Shipbuilding, and we did an investigation. And I went in there on January 27th, did a recorded meeting, and I absolutely dominated them, destroyed them across the board. One of the people that got transferred, Jim Perrin, one of the officers, laughed at racism being all some narrative to get him, as he lied about the case and covered this up. So then everything happened with George Floyd. I would go out protesting and everything. 2 police officers would show up stalking me up and down the road. It was really bad. There was a whole front page news article on it. August 5th, 2020 is part of the process. I would send a detailed letter talking again about animal behavior, and boom, the next day, Premier Stephen McNeil resigns. Okay, and you're like, well, how does this all relate back to you walking down to Halifax Regional Police on August 2nd, 2023, and 2022, and you getting arrested? I'm giving some backstory about the evidence that we have here. So, if you actually jump forward to before I went down, you will see that I am asking all parties to please come forward. Please don't escalate this any further. I had sent a detailed review on December 23rd, 2021. Again, asking. You go back to August of 2021, me begging somebody to please come forward. But these parties knew what they did. So, what happened was I said, look, if you don't come forward, I got to go down to the police station. I'm going to go file a complaint in regards to this. It looks like Dan Kinsella was absolutely involved in the theft of my property, right? And covering this up, this abuse. And if somebody doesn't come forward, I have to go and report this because the abuse that happened to me was so severe and well documented. So I'll give you an example of some of the overlays here. So back in 2019, my wallet was stolen and ended up in the custody of HRP. They said, oh, it's part of something ongoing. We're like, how do you not know where your wallet was found? I'm like, I have all this evidence. I have witnesses. And I called and reported it to my bank right away. So I don't know. Here's the thing. Jim Perrin, that same officer at Irving, would have control of that wallet while he was still an HRP officer at HRP. And I'd go pick it up on June 5th. And by the 17th, his job would be posted with Irving Shipbuilding. And guess who would just happen to be sent to investigate? That's right. So anyways, we're looking at all this data before I walk down. And you can see that there was this massive phishing and hacking with Valent Legal where they sent me this fucking letter and I went to click on it. It was a scam. Right? But what you'll also see is days before this, you will see these massive property view spikes associated with my property, showing you that some sort of monitoring is going on. So I can show you my GPS was set there. I can show you these correlations with EMIC where they engaged in all this howling and everything. Here these property spikes correlate with me sending letters, jumping into the hundreds if not thousands from zero. Showing you these massive phishing and hacking attempts against my accounts before walking down to Halifax Regional Police. And on July 11, 2022, I released the first version of the Wolf and the Neural Network Alpha.
You have reached the maximum.
I got a call back.
For your recording. 022202013 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hi there, it's Scott George again. This is another video entry. I think it's number 3 there. My phone number is 902-220-9106. Again, I'm calling to report the sexual violence covered up by Shelley Muse and Kurt Wallace and RCMP, and I'm going to continue my my story here. So everybody, what we can do is we can say, oh, look at all this complexity. We can go through that, but we're not going to go through complexity. What we're going to do is go through what actually happened on August 2nd, 2022. And the stuff that I'm going to show you is really concerning. I'm going to show you absolute evidence of fraud and some very, very sick, demented, hate-filled people. Okay.
Please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hi there, this is Scott George calling back. My phone number is 902-220-9106. I had called a few times earlier as part of the video series. It only allows me to make 5-minute increments, and so I had to disconnect and call back. So this would technically be video number 4. However, to the video watchers and to this phone call, in the last call we lost power out in Ecom for about 3 hours, so I wasn't able to respond. That's why it would have shut off suddenly. But to be honest with you, I'm quite happy the power did shut off because it changed my entire mindset for this video. Right? I went into this very kind of like upset about these people, and I was going to go at them and fucking lay out the evidence and everything like that. And we're still going to do that, but I feel like I got a little bit better of a handle on it now. So before we go any further, first off, it needs to be made very clear that I released a massive update to the wolfandtheneuralnetwork.com, which you could already go to and find all of this evidence and everything that we spoke about, and the police left out of all of their reports. So now you actually have access to a date hopper. So all the evidence that I posted, you can jump to the dates directly from the hopper. But we also have a tag deck, which allows you to sort through tags and automatically is attached to the information, so the data table. So as you put tags together, it'll shorten the data table and it's all linked up like that. And it allows you to explore tags and then open up a tag manager to go see more information about those and perform searches on them. So this is all automatic in the system. You can add infinite amount of files and it will just infinitely tag them automatically. Right? So then you have an advanced search that allows you to search across all the AI models. It allows you to search across all these different news sites and across Google and all the traditional sites. So there's no excuse that you don't know something because it's all right here and you can search from here. Again, now, none of this happens on any server. This all happens locally on your device. So there's no information sent. It's all just yours, okay? So next up, we have the video player. So you see that I've redone the entire video player. Next up from there, you're going to see that there's a site creator. So now you can actually recreate the entire website in a click of a button or recreate any of the pages. Everything now is controlled by a centralized control file, a system config, that you can go in and make your own views and your own pages. So you could actually take the Wolf and the Neural Network, change everything out of it, make it your own site and have all the features. That's right, for free. Next up, so the site creator is pretty fucking cool. So if I make a change to a static site, I don't need to go back and update 43 different pages. I can easily just regenerate them, meaning the static site becomes as good as a dynamic site. So yes, maybe you're paying $15, $20 a month for a dynamic site, but this would allow you to virtually do it for free. And that's part of the process. I want this to be as simple and as free and low cost as possible, so somebody will be able to do what I did. So we're just going to move forward. All right, our next piece of tool here would be the system config. So you can actually open that up and you can see what the system config actually looks like. And this is actually a frame viewer. And So you can go through all the settings and you can download a copy yourself if you want and take a look at it. Next up, you're going to see that we have add files and delete files. We're going to come back to that one. We're just going to jump forward to converters for right now. So you'll see that we actually have converters. So you can go in there and you can convert documents to HTML in bulk. You can convert workbooks to JSON. Or, you can do PDF to text. There is a lot of different converters. And it's a little rough right now just because I'm mixing the idea of converters in the display. And I know that I'm doing that just because of the way I would have thought this out in the beginning and didn't really have time to change it. So it plays into the layout, which brings us into the add and delete files. So you'll notice that there's now a thing that's called blank workspace. You can add a modifier to any page that you're on, Twin Drive, and it'll go into a blank workspace. And so from there, you can actually add in different files, your own files. And it'll automatically add them and automatically go through them and allow you to download them and interact with them. But here's the really cool fucking part. So what I did was I built in optical character recognition for images. So you can go and drop an image and it will run Tesseract and pull out all the characters and tell you the confidence of it. I also added that feature for audio and video. So you can go there and drop in an audio or a video file and it will give you the best guess text out of it, but also give you the timestamp so you can click on it and it will take you right to that part in the video. So you can just transcribe it all like this. You can just put videos in and walk away. Same with audio, and then play them. And one of them's already been updated to extract as subtitles. So you could then take those subtitles and add them to your YouTube video or whatever. Just clean it up a little bit. Right? So, we just got to jump back to this. We got to end the call, and we got to come back into another 5-minute call here.
To an automatic voice messaging system, 902220013 is on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 902220013 est ton appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, it's Scott Jewers calling again. My phone number is 902-220-9106. I think I'm on number 5 for the video now. I'm just going to continue my series there. All right, so everybody, I just went through all the different features available on the website. It's a very powerful tool. You can literally transcribe video and audio files. It's pretty cool. It's all free. Again, nothing happens on any server. The only thing that I am tracking is basic Google Analytics for the site, just to see the numbers and stuff. I don't see anything, nothing sent to a third-party server. It's all on you, and you can go use this for free. Completely free. The Wolf in the Neural Network is completely free to use. Anybody can go and create their entire own website and stuff from it. It's completely open source. You can take it, use it under the Twin Public Initiative. I see you. All right, everybody. So now you know that these officers, right from 2023, could have gone to this website. It existed since then and could have gone to these dates and everything like that. Okay, this is why this is important. This is a major upgrade there to show my skills. All right, so now we're going to come back to the core video part of this. And I was talking about how, you know, I had all this evidence. I walked down Halifax Regional Police. I had released the Wolf in the Neural Network on the 11th and then waited like 21 days and walked down to 3 weeks and walked down to Halifax Regional Police. Before I had gone, I'd sent multiple emails saying, please, somebody contacted me. Don't make me do this. Please, 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 please. Nobody had contacted me. So I walked down there. I walked to CSIS and I dropped off some evidence in an old phone. And I had set a trap using USB. Anyways, you can go look at that information in another video. So this information was provided to them. I then walked down to Halifax Regional Police. I gave lots of warning. I sent multiple emails that morning saying, hey, please, please, please. That morning, my accounts were locked out as well, right? So we got these phishing attempts. My accounts get locked out. Now I'm walking down to Halifax Regional Police to file a serious complaint about what's going on here. So I arrive at the police station. I go in. I'm dressed in just like a muscle shirt and some shorts. I had my book bag with me. It was raining. I stated what I was there for. Said, hey, I think I have enough information to arrest the chief of police for his involvement in the theft of my property and serious abuse, but I got to speak to somebody about this. They said, hey, just make a call on this dispatch line. Call the officers. The officers came. This would have been Sarah Robichaud and Nick Fairbairn. So we spoke for a little while, and they realized right away, like, this was J.D. Irving, and they were not going to do anything. Right? And I just said, basically, look, I got this evidence. I'd like to sit down. I've submitted this evidence and said that it involves some of your officers and stuff. We're a major conflict of interest, whatever, whatever, whatever. So we talked for a little bit. They would have brought in this Sergeant Dukes. So she comes and talks to me, much more aggressive person. With it, I'm not saying she was like rude or anything like that, but very just like, and I was like, hey, I got this evidence and stuff, and I said, hey, like, here's about my wallet, and here's when Jim Perrin would have got transferred, or when his job got posted for J.D. Irving, and she stopped and her face went blank and white. She's like, you got that one right on the head. And I'm like, that's right. And Dan Kinsella apologized on the 19th, or said there wouldn't be apology on the 19th, November 19th, and that's when Jim Perrin got transferred, and serious events had occurred with me. So I need to report something going on here. I said, listen, this might not be Dan Kinsella, but the fact is he either knows about what's going on or he's being framed here. Either way, this individual will want to know. And as you'll see, the Emmett contracts match the start date. Everything. Right? So she says, oh, I'm going to get you a paper. We're a conflict of interest. We don't do this. We don't do this. Which is a lie. The police are required to take any complaint if it's even if it's about the chief of police. Right? So she says, I'm going to go get you a paper to file a complaint. That doesn't make sense. Why would you have papers like that if you didn't actually deal with that? So she goes in, and you will see her on the video come out with the paper and stuff, and I'm just standing there. She speaks to the officers and stuff, and then they just come over and arrest me instead of giving me the paper to file a complaint. I immediately, obviously, complied right up against the wall, and I was like, did you speak to Dan Kinsella? Did you ask him if this is how he wants to deal with this? And she's like, no. And then they put me in the car. When I was sitting in the car, I heard Nick and Sarah talking. They were talking like, this guy really sounds like he knows what he's talking about. And the other guy, and Nick's like, don't talk so loud. He can probably hear you. Telling you the truth. So they would have taken me down to the hospital. Now, we're coming up on the 5-minute mark, so we're going to need to disconnect here, and I need to come back.
At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hi there, Scott Yours again. My phone number is 902-220-9106. This is the 6th installment. Again, I can only make 5-minute increments because that's all your voicemail allows. And if Shelley Muse was a responsible police officer, she would have picked up long ago. So, it's really her fault. But anyways, I digress on that point, even though it's completely true. So, these officers would have taken me down to Halifax, down to the emergency, Halifax emergency, right? And so we get out, and we're like walking in, and like a tear ran down my eye. Like I knew I was being screwed, right? We were there, and I was with the young guy, with Nick, and I was like, listen, before we go in here, can you just wipe this away from my face? And he was hesitant. And I was like, listen, I'm not going to say you abused me or you touched me. I want to have a little bit of dignity when I walk in here, and I don't want this stream of like a tear running down my face right now. I really just, can you just help me? And he did. He wiped it away. So we go in, and this is part like where I would have got transferred to another officer, or the female officer, the younger officer, and I would have had to have gone to register, right? So we would have gone up to a nurse. Now, we walked up to the nurse, and they would have taken my blood pressure and stuff, right? And I was really curious. I said, hey, is that blood pressure good? And she's like, yeah, it's really good, especially considering the circumstances. She's like, do you know why you were brought in here? I said, yeah, I went down to Halifax Regional Police to file a complaint against the police. They said they were getting me a paper to file a complaint and just came back and arrested me. And she stopped. She looked right at the officer and she said, really? Are the handcuffs really necessary? As I sat there completely calm the entire time, anybody would have been concerned about what was going on. So then I was then taken and left in handcuffs for 10 hours. Sat there completely calm, went through several different officers. Now the first person I was made to talk to at Nova Scotia Health Authority was a woman, allegedly by the record, and I've tried to clarify this the best that I could. So if these individuals have an issue with this, they should reach out to the RCMP and out to Douglas Grant of CPSNS. Had they not committed fraud in this situation and have dealt with this, I wouldn't have these issues or have to mention these names. And the record will show that I did try to deal with this respectfully and responsibly. It is these parties who did not and engaged in serious abuse and retaliation, meaning everything that I'm about to say is absolutely in the public interest, and these parties have committed fraud. fraud. And they have called the administration of justice into disrepute that I do not and did not, cannot get a fair process out of this. So if these people don't like that their names are being mentioned, they shouldn't have committed the fraud and they shouldn't have been abusers in the first place. Remember, they were all given opportunities and I will show that they lied. So I will do my best to minimize damage and keep myself controlled here, but you all need to realize that the people we're about to speak about, these people committed serious violence, they committed serious fraud. These weren't mistakes, this was retaliation, okay? These people tried to hurt me as a person. So, I'm going to do my best. And if they have a problem, then you blame RCMP, you blame CSIS, you blame yourself for doing what you did. Now, so I would have spoken with Nancy Murphy. I automatically told her, Nancy, like, hey, really calm everything. Said that I was just falsely arrested, like I don't know what to do. And I said, like, I want a lawyer. And she's like, there's no way you can contact a lawyer. And I'm like, well, like, what do I do? Like, you're telling me that if I don't talk to you, you're saying I'm not cooperative and stuff. So my best bet is to be generally cooperative, and you're denying me a lawyer. So I just answered her basic questions. I told her I'm a technical expert of 18 years, worked at Dalhousie, I worked for BlackBerry as a systems analyst, and I worked for Irving Shipbuilding. I told her about my IT background and that I'm an expert in these areas. I'm actually really smart. And she went then mocked and humiliated me. I told her about the wolf in the neural network. And it was like a short conversation. You could see the record. I said, no, Nancy, I went down there with all this evidence. I had it all prepared. Right? Like, I'm a researcher. I did this project on populism and stuff, and like I tracked it. It's like really well done. And I took my time to do it. So it was like well prepared. I went to the police and they just arrested me. So Nancy's like, oh, well, you're going to have to stay here for a little while. I'm like, what did I do? So I then was sent back out into the hallway to sit with this officer. It was a male officer. And I was then in handcuffs for another 10 hours. Some slightly different variations of things happen, right? But we need to condense this, okay? And you can go read my report that was issued, I think, on October 22nd, 2022 to check for consistency here. Oh, we got to end this call because she's going to end, so we'll get into this next part, okay?
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice messaging system. 902202013 is on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 90222020113 est ton appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, Scott Yours calling back. My phone number is 902-220-9106. This is about the 7th installment in the video series that I'm doing. Again, I can only do them in 5-minute increments. Had Shelley Muse actually picked up like a responsible human being, we wouldn't have to do this, would we? So now we're going to continue this. So now I just talked about Nancy Murphy being sent back out into the hallway to sit with this other officer. I sat with him for 10 hours. I never moved. I didn't do a thing. Right? He's like, man, let me take them handcuffs and put them in the front and stuff. Like, we just talked like dudes, like basic conversation. And you can see his own report. They asked him, he's like, this guy was calm. He didn't do anything. Nothing. Sat there completely, nothing. Right? So I sat there for hours and hours. And finally, some woman came to take my blood. And I was like, why are you taking my blood right now? I was like, hey, and she's like, well, what's the problem? And this is what she said. What's the problem if you have nothing to hide? I said, ma'am, I have been denied a lawyer for like, what? I was like 8 hours at that stage. I've asked for a lawyer multiple times. And I just said that I was falsely arrested. I'm asking for a lawyer. Right? She's like, well, I have to do this. She's like, are you okay? I was like, I'm not hiding anything. I gave her my blood because I felt that they were retaliating against me, because they were retaliating against me. And everything I did just made me guilty. Like she said, I'm just guilty now. What do I have to hide? So she takes my book bag. She puts a giant sticker on it with the name Scott. Now, she disappears. So, after all this going on, I then get taken to an MRI machine or a CT scan or something. And I'm like, this is really inappropriate right now. And the officer asked me, he's like, Scott, what's the problem? Because I cried a little bit. I'm like, This is so inappropriate. I'm being denied a lawyer, and I'm being told to get in this machine. I said, man, listen to me. Would you right now strip down, get inside this machine, and if they seen something different, they're going to put you in the hospital just because. Would you do that? And he's like, I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't. And I'm like, that's exactly what I'm saying. The operator of the machine's like, listen, it's all right. She's like, it's all right. She's like, I understand. And I didn't do anything. I didn't freak out. I didn't raise my voice. I was expressing that I'm being falsely accused and I'm being falsely arrested and having these medical procedures forced upon me by these people telling me I'm guilty. If not, as they're denying me a lawyer. So we then go back and we have to set a little bit longer. And now is when I meet Shanti A. Blackmore. Now, this is going to be extremely triggering to some individuals. This is actually shocking. So I'm sitting in the room waiting for her to come. Before she comes, the officer that I'd sat with the entire night comes into the room. He's like, Scott, can I talk to you for a second? I was like, yeah. He's like, I have to be honest with you. He's like, this night did not go the way that I thought it was going to go. This is not what I thought was happening. He's like, you seem like a really nice guy and stuff. And he's like, I don't know what's going on, man. But he's like, I really hope that someday that you can trust somebody. And I was like, listen, I understand what you're saying and I appreciate it. You also seem like an all right fella. That isn't going to change what they're going to do here. Right? It isn't about trusting anybody. There's nothing about that. These people are just going to lock me up because they made serious mistakes. And so he leaves. And then Shanti A. Blackmore would come in the room. She immediately comes in and says, you haven't been denied a lawyer. I said, Shanti, I was denied a lawyer, which means she looked on her paper, seeing that somebody must have made a note. I assume the woman with the blood, because Nancy Murphy didn't. I have her record. She never mentioned it once. And I was like, I didn't know her name. I was like, actually, I was. I've been in handcuffs for almost 10 hours. Like, how could you know? She's like, well, she's like, they didn't write it down, so... And I'm like, it did. I've been asking for a lawyer. And I was like, Shanti, like, I've been in handcuffs for 10 hours. I don't want to talk about this. I want to go home. She's like, you have to talk about this or you're just going to be admitted. I was like, I don't want to. I've been denied a lawyer. I've asked at least 5 times now. And here's me now saying to Shanti A. Blackmore, I'm tired. I want to go home. I've suffered serious abuse. I'm asking her for a lawyer. She says, no. I'm like, if you're going to force me to talk about this, you have to guarantee me my rights and my privacy rights. And she's like, we take this very seriously. So I just said, hey, look, I'm a technical expert. First off, we need to end the call because we need to come back to this, okay? Because we got 5-minute limitations because of Shelley Muse.
0222013 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, it's Scott Yours calling again. Phone number's 902-220-9106. This is number 8 in the video series. Wouldn't have to do this if not for Shelley Muse covering up violent sexual assault. Everybody remember that. Alright everybody, picking up where we left off here. So, I'm in the room with Shanti A. Blackmore and she's forcing me to talk about this. I only talk about basics. You will see her record. She doesn't mention anything. No, nothing that you could contest, nothing that you could talk about, nothing whatsoever. Because she didn't have anything. I just talked about the general. I was like, look, the police themselves, Shanti, called themselves a conflict of interest. I went down there to file a complaint against the chief of police. I wasn't protesting or doing anything. I don't know why your record shows that. I didn't act agitated. I'm not acting like I was now. I sat there completely calm. I did what she asked and I answered her questions, made myself available. I was like, Shanti, these people are involved with this. I was in a serious position. I went to the police to file a serious complaint. I was like, some of this stuff you can actually look up on your phone. She stopped. I'm not here to fact check you. At that stage, a new officer came into the room, just stood there. Now, my officer told me, he's like, no, man, I'm going to be with you until 6 o'clock. And now this new officer's showing up here. Just stands there in the room. It was so awkward that it was like 20 seconds just stood there that she said nothing and I said nothing. And then he's like, Scott? I'm like, yeah? He's like, I guess I'm taking over from here. Goes into the room with the other officer sitting over there beside me. So we now continue our conversation. I said, Shanti, this is really inappropriate right now. I'd like to end this. I want to go home. She's like, that's kind of paranoid, isn't it? I said, what's paranoid? I don't want to talk about this. Now you're sitting here telling me I'm just a liar when you're forcing me to talk about this. She said, that sounds kind of paranoid, doesn't it? I was like, what do you mean? She's like, I think we have to admit you. I was like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you don't have a drive. I had $40 in my wallet for a cab. She's going to have a place to stay. I had people waiting for me and can prove all of this. That's right. She said, well, you're paranoid about the police. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean, Shanti? I'm filing a complaint about abuse. Telling you that the police called themselves a conflict of interest and falsely arrested me. Now, she stands up. This is really important. She's like, goes out, opens the door to the officers. We're admitting him. Guys, he thinks you can hear him out here. I never said that at all. I said nothing about that. I'm sitting there completely calm like this in my chair. She's like, Scott, tested. This is super important. I was like, what? She's like, tested, tested. She goes over, straddles the door like this, smiles. Come on, Scott, tested. See if they can hear you. He thinks you can hear them. I was like, Shanti, this is really inappropriate right now, and I stared at the wall. That's right. Like, I couldn't believe it fucking happened. I couldn't believe it. The smile on her face, the gratitude, the happiness that she was getting out of that moment. That she found somebody she could just abuse. You know what she said to me next? Oh, you can contact a lawyer now. I said, I think I'm going to wait until these officers leave. So the officer comes over to take my handcuffs off. He says, do you have any questions for me? I was like, man, this isn't right. He said, do you have any questions for me? I said, no. You should have seen the look on the other officer's face. They know that they sent that officer there to fucking harass me and make a dirty record. So I then go out to the front desk, speak to Nancy Murphy and the security guard. I said, Nancy, Shanti just said that I could have a phone to call a lawyer. Nancy Murphy looked at me and said, honey, there is no phone. She denied me a lawyer multiple times, so did Shanti, and then they both denied me a lawyer multiple times. I said, okay, well, where's my belongings? She's like, they've already been taken over. I was like, what do you mean they've already been taken over? How can my belongings be taken over to a hospital before I ever got admitted or talked to the doctor? How? I didn't say anything. I kept my fucking cool. I didn't say anything at all. Now, I'm going to end this one a little bit early because the next one is fucking wild.
Call has been forwarded to an automatic voice messaging system. 902220201 is on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 902220201 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, it's Scott George calling again. My phone number is 902-220-9106. This is number 9 in the video series. Again, I wouldn't have to make so many calls if Shelley Muse didn't cover up a violent sexual assault. So we're going to jump back into where we were. So we were talking about the abuse committed against me by Nancy Murphy and Chantier Blackmore. So now I'm getting taken over to the hospital. So I get in the... They take me in an ambulance, and the ambulance guy's just talking to me. He's like, what happened tonight? Whatever. And I was like, oh, I went to file a complaint against the chief of police, and they just arrested me. He's like, I was like, yeah. But, you know, he's like, well, how do I just believe this guy? Because this woman just called him mentally ill or something, so whatever. And this is what he said to me, and this is going to be super fucking important, okay? He said, well, somebody must like you because they're sending you to the nice one. Get ready for this. All right, so before we go further and talk about what happened at Mount Hope with Kristen Holm and the sexual assault, we need to back up and make sure that we cover what happened with Chantier Blackmore and Nancy Murphy in detail, so you'll understand why Kristen Holm did what she did, why she covered it up. All right, you see here, Chantier Blackmore came into that room and said you weren't denied a lawyer because she knew that Nancy Murphy didn't record it and this other woman did. That's right, which means she knew that Nancy Murphy had made serious mistakes already. Now, there's the other thing. On the intake record, it states that I was brought in because I was protesting outside of HRP. Nowhere's in the HRP police report do you see that at all. I was never protesting. No officer made that claim, and I never said it. That's right. And also on that record, you will find no statement from any of the officers who arrested me. None whatsoever. Just some false statement that I was found protesting outside of Halifax Regional Police. I told Nancy Murphy and Chantier Blackmore I was not protesting. That is false, and I don't know where they're getting that from. They called me a liar and never once in their record corrected it. Not in Nancy Murphy's record or in Shanti A. Blackmore's record. You can go look at the HRP video, my intentions in my emails. I never once said I was going down there protesting or causing any issues. They knew they made serious mistakes, including intake, and that I wasn't there, but I must just be a liar. They don't even have the statements from the officers on a record stating I did anything at all. Not a single officer, but I must just be guilty. Literally, they don't even have a statement or a statement from an officer about anything that I did, but I'm just guilty. So they knew they made serious mistakes. Chantier Blackmore knew that Nancy Murphy made serious mistakes. So she had to delete the record stating that I asked for a lawyer, because if not, they're in a lot of trouble. So look at the situation. I was never protesting. I told Nancy Murphy about the general evidence and all of this. She didn't do anything, kept me in handcuffs for that long as they all denied me a lawyer. Then they sent my belongings to Mount Hope before I ever seen a doctor. This is the best part. So I was sitting out in the hallway. Now, they brought in this guy who was sketched out on drugs. And he was walking back and forth, sketched out, and he looked at me and said, man, if you got problems, he's like sketched out. I felt bad for him. He didn't seem like a bad guy. He seemed like he had a problem. He's like, this is the place that you have to be. Okay? He was sitting down here with these different officers. So I'm sitting with my officers and I said, hey, man, I'm going to ask you a question. What do you think J.D. Irving would pay to stay out of jail? $100,000? $1 million? $10 million? $100 million? And you could tell his mind wandered. I looked over at those two officers holding that guy, and they were staring at me and their faces were red. That's right. Now, guess where my book bag ended up? Looks like it ended up with those two officers and that sketched out homeless man on drugs with a big sticker on it that said, Scott. So if you've seen that, what would you think his name was, everybody? Scott. They gave my book bag to a sketched out homeless man on drugs in the custody of these two other police officers, HRP officers. My book bag then gets sent to Mount Hope before I ever seen a doctor. Listen to what I'm saying here. Massive privacy breach. And when I get over there, this is going to be the good part, okay? So we got to come back to this. It sucks that we have to stop this. It breaks my flow. All because Shelley Muse has to cover up a violent sexual assault to pretend she's some kind of victim. It's fucked up. I know how fucked up it is. And then she's going to say, he called me multiple times. I'm the victim. Oh my God, it's fucking gross, but that's the world we live in. Anyways, I'll come back.
Automatic voice messaging system 902222013 is on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 902222013 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, Scott Yours calling back. My phone number is 902-220-9106. I'd really not like to make this many calls. Again, if Shelley Muse didn't cover up a violent sexual assault, I wouldn't have to do her job for her. All right, so let's move forward. All right, so now my book bag gets sent over to Mount Hope, right? Now, we're going to just cut into this little piece before we go back so you'll see how bad this was. So in the morning, you get up for breakfast around 8 o'clock. Somebody came and woke me up. It's like, you're going to miss breakfast. You got to go out and get it, right? Now, I wasn't like sleeping. I was just in the room, just sitting in there. And you're going to understand why. And they're just like, hey, it's breakfast, whatever, whatever. So I go out to the line. And this homeless guy came to me. And he's like, man, you can't talk around police like that. He's like, they got your fucking book bag and stuff. And he's like, we went all through it. He's like, do you want a rock, paper, scissors for one of the 20s? I was like, no, I don't. Now, my wallet had all my identity, financial information in there, my health card, which is PHI, so it was a massive privacy breach, everything. And this guy's now asking a rock, paper, scissors. So we go back to what happened at the QE2 emergency, right? and this is super fucking important because I filed complaint against Nancy Murphy and Kristen Holm in August of 2023. Okay, and I would have got the response from Douglas Grant in January of 2024. January 15, 2024. And inside of there, he immediately starts that we recognize that Nancy Murphy's notes of the encounter are incomplete. And how important this apparently is in terms of legal medical decisions, as Nancy Murphy completely slandered and defamed me. Never recorded that I was falsely arrested, never recorded that I asked for a lawyer. She said that I talked about Donald Trump or something. I never, what the fuck? I didn't. I said I did a project on populism. And I'm a technical expert. And that, there were issues with me, but the entire project, which included a book, The Wolf in the Neural Network, talked about populism, tracking this through the world and these different topics. I told her it was pretty cool. She never recorded the book, Wolf in the Neural Network. Nothing like that. And you'll see it all exists and objectively shows that I never said this was all about me or anything like that. It was released as a research paper. Chronologically ordered, 400 data points, hyperlinked, like 90% hyperlinked. Because Nancy Murphy committed fraud. I must just be guilty. See, she knew she would have to go to court to file complaint against those officers if I'm innocent. So I had to just be guilty. She doesn't even have a statement from any fucking person. Nobody. But I must just be guilty. Ask her of what? She don't know, I just must be. So she sent me to Chantier Blackmore, who knew she would legally have to testify, formally reprimand Nancy Murphy. So is it any wonder she mocked and humiliated me, deleted that I asked for a lawyer from the record? She was also involved with my book bag being sent to Mount Hope before I ever seen a doctor. A massive privacy breach. As she gets up, straddles the door, mocks and humiliates me, saying, "Test it, Scott." Then I go back in her notes just here recently. She tried to convince Kristen Holm to give me medication. She said that I was agitated and possibly schizophrenic. I didn't do anything. I sat there. So she could retaliate to try to justify what she said. She knew I'm going to file a complaint against her, so she had to say he was just agitated to cover up for the abuse of her and Nancy Murphy and sending my book bag and everything over there. They specifically tried to irritate the situation and agitate the situation. It's beyond disturbing. Literally, Douglas Grant says Nancy Murphy's records are incomplete and formally reprimands her. That goes well out and beyond. Douglas Grant then says there is absolutely no evidence Nancy Murphy was involved in your transfer of your belongings or they were sent to the hospital before you. You go to the first page on the Mount Hope notes. It says client's belongings arrived with the patient before him on the first page. Lists the contents of my wallet. $40 matching the story about the guy wanting to rock, paper, and scissors. And it lists my health card, financial, identity information. First fucking page. I sent that 5 times to Douglas Grant, CPSNS, and I called Crystal Morgan and told her. I gave them the page numbers. And he came back and said there's absolutely no evidence of it because he knew he had already formally reprimanded Nancy Murphy. I'm saying they denied me lawyers consistent with their incomplete record. And now I'm showing that my book bag was sent before these people committed serious violence against me, serious fraud, and are covering this up. And he would have to admit that. It's right there on that page. These people, Nancy Murphy and Chantier Blackmore, framed me that morning. They knew it was easier to abuse me than take responsibility.
Maximum time permitted for your record. 9-0-2-2-0-2-0-2-0-1-3 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, Scott Yours again. My phone number's 902-220-9106. I hate doing this, Shelly. I don't know what's wrong with you. Actually, I do know what's wrong with you, and it's really fucking sick, and I'm going to make sure that all of Canada understands who and what you are. I'd suggest you start looking for a new job, and it won't be in policing. All right, everybody, so next up, we're going into talk about the abuse of Chantier Blackmore and stuff, and we're coming back to this. So These parties severely abused me and covered up this fraud. I went back and got their records. They claimed that, and you got to really understand what they did here, said that I'm a single male who lives with his parents. I do not live with my parents. That's right, I co-own a house with my mother. I pay all my own bills. I have a serious technical background. My mother got really sick. She had severe physical and severe mental disabilities who needed serious help. I came back to take care of her during a pandemic. I was her caretaker. I cleaned her vagina. I helped her clean her ass. I got her everywhere she needed to fucking go. Gave her the Heimlich maneuver twice, 3, 4 times. They wrote I lived with my parents so they could degrade me as a man and then said he fits a subtype. You have to stop and appreciate the fraud that these people went through. And listen, when it comes to my mother, we have home care services and everything coming in. It is objectively true how sick she was. My doctor, who is my mother's doctor, when he heard this went, oh my God, your mother was a really sick woman. Why would they do this? Because they committed fraud to try to justify their violence. I'm just a man. They hated me, the idea of me. It didn't matter the facts or evidence. They were just prosecuting some fucking man. That's right. What subtype do these frauds fit? That they would commit fraud like that, lie about it, mock and humiliate. Yeah, you know exactly. You think they're going to face it like I'm facing it? No. So what subtype are they? They're in the category of some of the worst people in our society. And Chantier Blackmore knows it. Nancy Murphy knows it. You think either of them are going to face it? Absolutely not. They know they're going to go to jail for what they did. We're going to jump forward now to Mount Hope. So I'm at Mount Hope. When I get there, so it's important to show you that I never got there until after 5 a.m. in the morning. So they kept me awake all night. The day before, I was awake at 6 o'clock. So at this stage, I'm almost awake 24 hours. Right? When I get there. Now, in their notes, you will see them state around 5 o'clock, oh, the person's asleep. I was not asleep. My roommate talked a lot, which was okay because I was like, I'm in a mental institution. I'd rather know who this person is. And if he wants to talk, then let him fucking talk. So he talked and said, hey, you can hear the people coming. He's like, just close your eyes. They'll go away. So we just closed our eyes and he kept talking. I got really lucky. Yes, he was a talker and stuff, but I got really lucky. Right? And I want to say thank you to that person because that person looked out for me when I was in there. Some person who was having a serious issue came after me and stuff and he convinced him like this guy's like completely cool. He's like So listen, thank you if you're watching this, man. Thank you. That could have been a lot fucking different. Now, so they had talked. So I was awake until like, oh man, it was like, I was awake well after 7 o'clock talking with this guy or whatever. The next thing I know, I dozed off. So I was awake over 24 hours and I just dozed off. It couldn't have been 15, 20 minutes. I woke up to a man standing over top of me, okay? And I was like, hello? And he's like, oh, he said something to me. And then he said, oh, how's your stomach or something? I was like, what? And he said, your stomach. And then he shoves his hand, this is important, down to about here. He was 100% touching my pubic area. I jumped back in the bed and said, like this, I was like, oh, and he's like, it's okay, I'm a doctor. How much weed do you smoke? Listen, we need to redo the call because what I've got to say next is really important.
902220201 est ton appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey everybody, Scott Jors here again. I think this is number 10 video call. My phone number is 902-220-9106. Alright, so we were talking about the sexual assault that occurred and how inappropriate it was that this doctor had touched me. So this doctor had left and my first instinct was to go try to make phone calls to tell my family where I was, right? Because they didn't know. So I went and tried to use the phone, but because the only numbers I knew were long distance, it wouldn't go through and I didn't know why. So I was trying to call people. I couldn't call anybody, couldn't do anything. And they were like, and then somebody came and said, And I was like, I can't really do anything, so I went back to the room, and then they came and got me and said, oh, you're going to, like, meet the doctor now or whatever, right? So what you'll see is by this time frame that I was awake over 24 hours, and now it's 11 o'clock, and now I'm going to meet Kristen home. So I've been awake over 24 hours. I've been humiliated, sexually assaulted. They shipped my book bag over. You can see the fucking notes. You can see them formally reprimanding Nancy Murphy. You can see all of the evidence. I was severely abused, completely calm the entire time. They never recorded I was falsely arrested or anything like that. Now I'm being taken into a room with Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm. And this is going to be very triggering from some individuals because what this person did was not just malpractice. These weren't mistakes. Okay? What we're about to describe is sociopathic, pathological behavior by this individual. Okay? That is to state that we're going to actually... Okay, so I go into this room with Kristen Holm, and we just introduced each other and said whatever, and I was like, Kristen, I need to bring something up to you. I was just in this room, and this guy came in, and he touched me down here. He shoved, and then said that he was a doctor. Kristen Carrie Lynn Holmes said, he knows that they're not supposed to touch you, so it didn't happen. I said, Kristen, I assume that was your policy. And I'm not just trying to get this man in trouble, but I need to tell you that it did happen, and it was super inappropriate. I'm really uncomfortable by it. Guess who never recorded any of that and just moved on? I assume that okay, so when she said that, there was a male nurse, or male person in there with her, and the way they looked at each other, it will be in my fucking head for the rest of my life, because it wasn't like, oh, bad. It was like, again? Anyways, I told Kristen Holm the basics, like, Kristen, I was falsely arrested, like, and I was just seriously abused and denied a lawyer, like, these people humiliated me and my stuff got sent over here like I didn't do anything wrong. I'm like, this is a very serious issue, and I took this to the police. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Right? And she's like, well, what happened? I just said about the basic evidence. I was like, look, I'm a technical expert and stuff, and I said, this stuff happened. She's like, started asking me again about my personal life, and I told her that I cared for my sick, disabled mother. Just what I told all you guys, like, hey, Kristen, I'm like, look, Kristen, and it's getting really bad lately. Something else is going on with her. I don't know what it is, but it's becoming much more difficult. And I'm having more and more issues, and like something really serious is going on. And I was like, Kristen, my mother is actually really sick and she should not be left alone. And I was like, the best she might have is like a 9-year-old boy that can go there and help her. Like, they can't help her. I was like, Kristen, I understand you want to keep me in here, but I need to get in contact with her. If you let me out, just make sure that I can find somebody to take care of her because she's really sick right now. I will come in here and I will answer any question that you have, and I will stay as long as you want, but my mother cannot be left alone. She is very sick right now. So Kristen Holm just asked me about my mother. And I was like, yeah, Kristen, like, I take care of her and stuff. I'm really educated. I keep educating myself. I watch a lot of science videos. I teach myself programming. I read different books and stuff like that. I really take education seriously. It's really important. I'm already really well educated. I've had these jobs here in my backgrounds, right? And I know that I'm proficient. I really wanted to help my mother because I knew I could do these other things, but I also knew she needed help and that nobody could possibly help her. And I wanted her to have a good quality of life. Me and Mom went through different shit when I was a kid and stuff. She had her fucking issues and stuff growing up. It was rough at different times, right? But I want to look at that, and I don't want to have those bad feelings inside of me because I don't resent her and I don't dislike her for it or anything like that. I care about her. In fact, I feel a little bit bad for her to go through everything that she did, knowing what she had her whole life and had no help with it. So I wanted to help her. We need to cut this call short.
Call has been forwarded to an automatic voice messaging system. 902220201 is on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 902220201 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, everybody. Scott George again. Phone number's 902-220-9106. I think this is number 11. All right, number 11. All right, so we're talking about the meeting with Kristen Holm, where she was just talking about my mother, and I'd explained to her like how sick she was and that I was in fact a caretaker and very well educated. Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm looked right at me and said that I wasted years of my life looking after my mother. I was like, Kristen, what are you saying right now? Well, you should have been working and stuff. Why weren't you working? Aren't you just dependent? I'm like, I'm caring for a very sick, disabled woman, Kristen. She looked at me and told me I wasted my life. I want you to look at your kids right now. And if they went and did what I did to help my mother, that isn't wasting your fucking life. Compassion and doing the right thing when somebody needs help isn't wasting your life. What is Kristen Holm doing in there? Oh yeah, that's right. She's just getting paid for it. She doesn't have compassion for those people. She doesn't understand what it is like to live like that and need help. She doesn't understand it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of time when I do it, but she's a goddamn hero. Kristen Holm then looked at me and said, it can't be you. And I said, Kristen, what can't be me? It. I'm like, what? What's it? Now, what's important is from that interaction, Kristen Holm never recorded my mother's physical or mental disabilities at all, and they are severe and well documented. This is not a joke. She didn't record it. She said I wasted my life in that period from 2019, look at it, the end of 2019, to that date. We were in the middle of a global fucking pandemic, a literal global pandemic. It was no isolated case. She told me that I didn't make sense. I own a house out here in this country that I paid bills for. She told me that I was irrational for not also paying for my house, moving to the city in the middle of a global pandemic and getting an apartment when all the jobs are disappearing. Literally, I had a job interview for Lockheed Martin and they're like, well, we're not hiring right now because of the pandemic. Literally, globally. Where you can't go outside. I got a sick mother, so how am I going to take care of her? Drag that disease back and forth to make that violent, delusional predator Kristen Holm happy. To show that I'm making the most of my life as per her description, and she doesn't know a thing about me. That's right. You're all like, what? Listen, if you all had a house out in the country during the pandemic, I got trees, woods, I got everything, a big yard. Would you move to the city? Who's the irrational one? And she's going to say she didn't know as she sat there with a mask on her face. She didn't know we were in a global pandemic. My mother has severe risk. If she got COVID, she would die. So I stopped home care, took care of her completely. Helping her wash her vagina, washing her ass. She would get so fucked up sometimes she'd stand there, piss on the floor. And I would clean it up. You want to know how many times I cleaned piss up off the floor? Hundreds, if not 1,000. And got her cleaned up in the middle of the fucking night. That's right, I wasted my fucking life because Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm was going to take care of her, right? My mother had severe fucking mental and severe disabilities. And when you hear what Kristen did next, oh my God. So she's like, you're here for a mandatory 3 days. So there's nothing that you can do. I was like, nothing I can do. Great. I assume Kristen Holm recorded any of it, that I was denied a lawyer and stuff. She never recorded any of it. None of the abuse I listed, not the sexual assault, not my mother's physical disabilities, how severe it was, none of it. Because she was looking at the record from the emergency department saying, holy shit, they fucked up big time. He didn't live with his parents. If she corrects that, then it looks like they fucked up, so she has to lie in line with it. She can't record any of it. Scott George must just be a liar. We got to make him into a liar no matter what. If not, we have to face our own records here. And you're going to see what she did next, and this next part is absolutely horrifying.
Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 902202001 est en appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, everybody. Scott Jewers again. My phone number is 902-220-9106. Calling back to do another segment. I think we're on number 12. I really wish we didn't have to do this. Breaks the flow. I waste 30, 40 fucking seconds, a minute every fucking time because of filthy Shelley news, which you'll try to use against me. Goddamn dirty fucking cops. Imagine if we didn't have dirty fucking cops like this. Imagine what kind of society we could live in. Right, then what would Mike Duhem and Dennis Daly do if they didn't have dirty cops like that to fucking lean on? Right? Anyway, so that evening, after this occurred, I sent out a broad email back to these email lists, and you will actually see at the bottom, there are like dozens, if not 100 email addresses, including all these law firms, government officials and stuff, stating I went to HRP and I was falsely arrested. Now, I want to read something to you because this is going to become absolutely critical, okay? I want you to hear what I said here. They checked me into the NS, literally saying I made it up. I only talked about McNeil and Post Media just because I said it was a conflict of interest, and I think that's what I got caught up in at Irving that caused these issues. That's it. Never went any details, and I could show you the records. I didn't talk about anything. I didn't speculate. I didn't slander anybody. In fact, I did the opposite. Anyways, about McNeil and Post Media, which is objectively true. It's true. That's what I think I got caught up in. I don't know. Anyways, I had to sleep in a bed with shit on the blankets. You should have seen it. It was smeared all over the fucking blankets. I had to go out and like, what is this? What is going on? They gave my book bag to a random man who himself said he was high on drugs and woke up hugging it. He woke up hugging it. Went through my wallet, seen money, and felt bad. I then woke up to a man standing over me. I never did anything wrong. I'm going to jump forward. They said they are basically going to force drugs into me Friday to force me to say it never happened when all of you know it did. So this was on August 3rd at 5:54 p.m. I sent this out, talking about the man standing over me, the abuse. I was really nervous about further retaliation from Kristen Holm and these staff members. Watching her commit that fraud in that meeting, watching her degrade and humiliate me about my mother, and then not record this abuse and call me a liar about the sexual assault. I had every reason to believe Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm was going to retaliate against me because she knew those staff members made serious mistakes. Look at it. It states I was admitted because I was protesting. Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm never mentions protesting at all anywhere in any of her notes. So why didn't she clarify? How didn't Chantier Blackmore, Nancy Murphy, or Kristen Holm not clarify that once in the record or even mention protesting? Because they knew they were covering up that it never happened. They're saying he must just be a liar. That's right. Must just be. Police just wouldn't lie. Nancy Murphy then just wouldn't lie. Chantier Blackmore just wouldn't lie. And Kristen Holm, well, they just wouldn't lie. Here they all are lying. We got all the records and everything. And watch what Kristen Holm did. So I now had to stay in the hospital. Now, this is really important here. So you're allowed to list the people who can come or ask anything about you. I want you to see one of the names on the list, which is David Fraser, a top privacy lawyer in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and from Canada. And I listed him as like, what is the relationship? And I said, not sure. Something like that. And so we know my phone's GPS location, everything was set to 9330 Highway number 7, Stillwater, Nova Scotia, and that was basically planted evidence you can associate with Emic and all these howling wolves and everything, and it's obviously spyware. So I would call David Fraser's office and ask for assistance. You know what he sent? This isn't in my area of law, after saying he's a conflict of interest. Now watch what happens. I start reading the book, Moby Dick. Inside of it, you have the Pegasus, right? That, and spyware version is Pegasus. And you have the Battlestar Galactica. And you have the Cylons and everything like that. So anyways, I'm reading this book, Moby Dick. Now, I'm sitting there watching CTV News. Guess at what time RCMP chose to do their inquiry into spyware? The same time that I'm falsely arrested. And guess who goes on the news? David Fraser. Going on about spyware and all this different stuff. I thought this wasn't in your area of expertise, David, and here I am reading this with your name on this paper. All this evidence, these technical reviews of you, and where is he? We're going to get to that part next.
902222013 est en appel. After tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, Scott George again. Phone number's 902-220-9106. All right, so we're talking about David Fraser and stuff. The reason this is important is in Moby Dick, there's also a character named Starbuck. And in Battlestar Galactica, there's also a character named Starbuck. Now, this wasn't added to be like, oh, special, but it was to show you at that time, like, look, there's nothing else I could do. Look at this amazing consistency. And now David Fraser's on television going on about spyware, but telling me this isn't in his purview. And yet this is happening in Nova Scotia. We got psychological warfare. And this involves EMIC, which involves Cambridge Analytica, which is stuff he does talk about in his other videos and stuff. So isn't this weird? It is weird, right? So anyways, we got to jump forward to what happens next. So we're going to jump forward to August 5th, 2022. Now, I'd be in the room, and a woman would come and get me and say it's time to talk to the woman. So this is my third day mark. I'm finding out what's going to happen here. So I'm going to go talk to Kristen Carey Lindholm. Now, I realized that Kristen Carey Lindholm, so they didn't know I was recording these interactions. So I record this interaction and I go out, and this is the only one I've released so far because it is more than enough to prosecute Kristen Carey Lindholm for what she did. I'm going to make sure I get her on record lying more, and I'm going to make sure she gets the maximum sentence. And I am looking for about 15, 20 years in a federal prison cell for what she did. When you hear what happened next, you're going to agree. All right. So we go into the room. And she was like, how you doing? I said, I'm going to admit to you, I'm like a little bit nervous about what's going to happen today. And she's like, yeah, I'm not going to give you good news. I'm keeping you. She didn't know this was all recorded. I was like, okay. She's like, I think you're suffering delusions. You're just making stuff up. And I was like, so this audio recording was released that evening, okay? So this has been released since 2022. That's right, released to a bunch of these parties, all these different parties and stuff. So you can go back and listen to this. It was put out there. Now, what we're actually going to do for this is I'm going to play pieces of this so that you hear me talking. That I'm calm, I'm rational, I'm asking really good questions, I'm articulate, and she is not able to answer anything. She isn't able to explain what's going on. She isn't even able to answer a single basic question. Well, she admits she never talked to the police when I asked her to please contact the police to make sure, to see if they're still okay with doing this before she does anything or abuses me. And she admits it. She admits that she has no statement from any police officer or anything. It is absolutely fucking horrifying. And that's not even the worst part. You got to really hear what happened in this, and you're going to understand why I'm so upset. So, when we're speaking, I was like, why, Kristen? What did I do? What did the police say I did wrong? And she said,
it wasn't about your behavior. It was about what you were talking about.
That's right. That's right. So she's admitting it was nothing about my behavior. It's what I was talking about. So we have a thing in Canada, you know, you've got your charter rights and you've got your freedom of expression. I'm allowed to go to the police station and state these things that, hey, this seems like it's involved. So ask her, what about my case don't I have the right to speak about? And that is delusional. If you have a complaint, should you not go to the police? Of course. Doesn't matter here. I want you to listen to something a little bit longer. And this one's going to be long, but we need to go through this. So what I'm going to do is we're going to cut this call short because I want to make sure this gets all done in one take here.
902-220-0213 est ton appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, everybody. Scott George again. Phone number 902-220-9106. I think there's 13 in the installment. All right, so we're going to listen to a clip of that, right? Like, this is all available. I'll put the link up. You can go watch all of this, but we're going to listen to a longer clip so you can hear what Kristen Holm did. And when you realize it, oh, boys, it's really scary.
It wasn't about your behavior. It was about what you were talking about.
That's right, but every date that I listed, I can prove was an event because we went through all of this, and that's why I understand that might seem like that, but if I'm a technical expert, right? I consider myself an investigative journalist as well, right? So I went through and I did my job, and if I was a security researcher, you would say, good job. If I was a detective, you would say, good job. As an investigative journalist, I did a good job, and what I'd like to do is sit down and have a conversation with somebody you know, discuss the facts before we decide this is psychosis and you go and put pills in me, because I feel like that steals my individuality, you know, like I feel like it's a form of like cruel and unusual punishment, because like when you look at back what the police did, like it's very inappropriate that they brought me in under those circumstances.
Well, police, you know, honestly, they do that all the time.
All right, everybody, did you hear that? The police just do that all the time. You heard me say, hey, look, I don't know, I got this evidence, I'm an expert. I'm saying, hey, before you drug me, can we please sit down and have a practical conversation? Remember, she just admitted me because she didn't want anything on the record, because then she couldn't claim plausible deniability. You hear me talking rationally and calm to her, stating like, look, I am a technical expert. You are engaging in cruel and unusual punishment because I went to the police to file a complaint. I'm just asking you, Kristen, to please stop being aggressive and abusive like this. Sit down and have a proper conversation. I'm just asking for my basic rights. She knew I was already denied a lawyer. She knew she had denied me a lawyer. She knew exactly what she was doing here, right? Listen to how calm I was.
Right? When they're concerned, it's out of a concern for people.
But they would say that, right, because they didn't look at any of the evidence. As a police officer, I said, okay, I can present you with the evidence. I can prove I did send it to HRP. I can prove I did call RCMP about this and have a discussion. Right? We had discussions and the RCMP said, like, now they have to explain the dates. And I told RCMP, like, look, I'm here if you would like to have a conversation. I'm here anytime. I provided my number. I provided contacts. Like, I'm not making, like, any of this up. And I think that it's really fair.
I certainly don't disagree. I think that you
If you are
have done all
satisfied
of
with
it.
your message, press 1. To listen to your message, press 2. To erase and re-record, press 3.
Oh, something happened.
9 0 2 2 2 0 2 0 1 3 est ton appel. At the tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, everybody. Scott George calling again. Our last one was cut short. It went right off to asking if I was satisfied about voicemail or something. I don't know. Anyways, phone numbers 902-220-9106. We're going to jump into the next part of this. So, you just listened to Kristen Holm. Just say the police just do that all the time, so it's just okay. They shouldn't be questioned at all. You hear me say, like Kristen, but they would say that, right? Which is true. The abusers don't record their abuse, which is the same thing Kristen Holm did. That's right, so they didn't record their abuse, so I must be guilty. Like, how does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense at all to anybody, right? So let's keep listening.
Things, right?
Right.
But I think what I'm saying,
Which connection specifically do you think that I don't think is there?
right, so the fact that all of the things that you have done have influenced greater things in
I don't
Nova
think-
Scotia history,
No,
right?
not in history at all, just with
You're
McNeil.
resigning.
Yeah. Did you see the letter that I sent the day before that? That great day before he resigned though?
I have not seen the letter, but you told me about it.
That's right, it was between Jim Perrin, who was the commander, and it was with Harjit Saj, who was the defense minister. Now, when I filed the complaint with the shipyard, I said, look, here's what I think should resolve this, you know? The privacy law for all employees, and I'll give the person right at the top 6 months to resign, and we'll keep this quiet, right? So after I sent the letter to the shipyard on the 5th, the next day, Stephen McNeil, you can Google it yourself, he resigned and everybody was surprised. And he immediately came out and said it was the black community because it was involving racism and those types of issues. And then you can check that on February 5th, he then left office, which was 6 months later, like I said, and then a day later, Kevin McCoy also left the office. And
Now, you hear what I'm saying? That's right, matches everything perfectly. In fact, here's the dates of everything popping up. I gave them 6 months to correct it. And here you go. Here's the resignations at 6 months, both leaving the office day after I send the letter. The direct connections. What Kristen Holm also didn't record on her record was that we did a serious investigation at Urban Shipbuilding. She never recorded any of this. You'll hear her say this was about my wallet. At Urban Shipbuilding, we never discussed a wallet or anything. That was never brought up until late 2021 and only in a minor context. Kristen Holm became fixated on this wallet thing that was never discussed. There was severe harassment at Irving Shipbuilding. My wallet then ended up with HRP and just happened to end up with Jim Perrin, who was transferred because of the Wortley report and the association with systemic racism, them not wanting to apologize and wanting to delete the evidence. We then went to Irving Shipbuilding. Jim Perrin mocked that, said it was all some narrative to get him, as they got absolutely dominated on their audio recording, and then police officers stalked me up and down the road while I'm protesting racism in Ecum Secum. When my face popped up in that newspaper, the internet to my house got cut for 2 days. You don't like that? It's the fact of the data. If you don't like what you think that means, that's not on me. Look at it. 2 police officers stalked me up and down the road, terrorized me. Community members were like, we're not leaving you alone. One guy went up and parked at the top of the hill pointing down. The other guy drove back and forth for 40-some kilometers away from a police station. They're like, they're trying to get you alone. They're going to do something to you. I was like, it's okay, I'll deal with them. One of the women's like, are you fucking stupid? They're trying to get you alone. There ain't no fucking way I'm leaving here. That's right, you'll see my face pop up in the newspaper article. After all these people, Jim Perrin mocked it. And they're lying about this abuse at Irving Shipbuilding. They got dominated in the fucking investigation. They know the abuse from the individual that the complaint was about was historical and across multiple employees. And they were covering up serious abuse. They got caught there. They got caught fucking in that recorded meeting mocking racism and harassment. And now the police are stalking me up and down the road while I'm out there with a sign. But it's all some narrative to get Jim Perrin. We need to jump into the next phone call. Hey there, everybody. Hey there again, it's Scott Yours, calling 902-220-9106. I'd like to not make so many phone calls, but again, if Shelley Muse wasn't a sex offending fraud, we wouldn't have to deal with this, would we, Shelley? Alright, so we're going to play a little bit more of this video.
And I said, okay, I'm still working with Employment Service Development Canada. And then that ended in March 2021, and I contacted the Prime Minister after I just sent him a...
Now, let's talk about Service Development Canada and speaking with the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. I put forward an argument. I was supposed to receive a letter back from the Privacy Commissioner, ESDC, in terms of jurisprudence. That letter went missing from my fucking mailbox, which you can then associate. I assume in my mailbox, I've never had mail go missing. ESDC claims it came, but you can then associate another address with the second EMIC contract. I'll pop it up on the screen. We can talk about that later. I don't know what happened, but then check the date with these howling wolves and stuff. It matches the second EMIC contract when this was removed from my mailbox. Remember my first EMIC contract? My phone's GPS location was set there. All right, so let's keep going.
Email was very friendly, and then I waited, and then I contacted the larger group in September 2021. That's when I engaged RCMP. Now, the reason this has drug on this long is because the overall company, Post Media, I didn't piece it all together until J.D. Irving sold their media holdings, Brunswick News Inc., to Post Media for $16.1 million. And then I said, Post Media is obviously involved in this. So I went back. So that's how it seems to be taking so long. And this is all dates that you can verify. Like in 2019, the NDP criticized the relationship with Post Media because they're 66% foreign owned.
I'm going to stop you there because we're not going to agree on this, okay?
But you can Google these things, and I'm not making them up. I can prove the letters and everything to you.
Yeah.
All right, so you heard that, right? So I'll just let it go. And you'll be like, why'd you talk about different... It's like, I was in the worst moment of my life. Did I act erratic there? Was I unmanageable in any way? No. I want you to listen to something else. I asked Kristen Holm.
But are you concerned about what the police did and them doing?
I'm concerned about your wellness.
What about my wellness?
But I think you're unwell.
Not concerned about what the police did at all, everybody. All right. Listen to this.
From what I understand, so I haven't heard from the police, it's only what's documented in the emergency.
Where Shanti A. Blackmere was involved in the transfer of my property. Nancy Murphy was formally reprimanded for incomplete record. That's fucking right. Where I was mocked and humiliated. That's the only record she has. There's nothing from police. I asked her to please reach out to the police to see if they want to stand by this. She didn't even do that because then she couldn't claim plausible deniability on the record. She knew about this. Listen, after our first meeting, that male nurse came into my room because he checked on something, whatever. And I said, hey, man, do you know the next time that I'm going to be able to talk to the doctor? He sat right down in the bed. He's like, it'll probably be in like a day or so. But he's like, listen, he's like, man, that argument, that stuff you talked about, the police being a conflict of interest and stuff. He's like, that's a really good argument. He's like, I can tell you I've never heard anything like that before. He's like, so just take it easy. That's right. Guess what? Kristen Holm never recorded any of that about the conflict of interest, about the investigation, the mocking racism and harassment. She tried to claim it was about some wallet. So this man knows 100%. I don't know how he can sit there and look at Kristen Holm knowing she covered up this abuse. Okay, so we need to end this call. We got to make another one. We're ending a little bit short because I want to get into the really good part about it here, okay? Because we're going to finalize the call with Kristen Holm and then talk about the real abuse, and it is shocking. Hey, everybody. So this is Scott Jors here again, and I think this is number 14 or 15. Phone number 902-220-9106. So we're just going through that call with, or that meeting with Kristen Holm and going through a couple more video clips. I want you to hear what the things that she said, okay? So I ask her, so you're going to make me take this drug? So she says, we're going to give you risperidone, antipsychotic. I was like, please don't do that. Can we not do that? Can we please have a proper discussion before you go and do something like that? And I told her about the damage it caused my mother and stuff. Like, it fucked my mother really fucking bad. Like, really fucking bad. She was a zombie. Like, she couldn't walk. She just pissed herself and stuff because of the fucking drugs they gave her. And now Kristen Holm's going to give it to me. And when you see the side effects of that drug and what this person did, oh my God. All right. So, here's me asking her.
So, like, you're going to make me take this until I say that didn't happen. Is that my
I'd like to
understanding?
see you be better.
That's right. She didn't tell me, oh, you just got to be better, which is basically saying, no, you better just agree with me that you're sick and say that I'm a hero helping you live your best life. Now, listen, you think I'm joking here? Listen.
I just want you to live your best life.
She just wants me to live my best life. That's right. She's going to drug me, torture me until I tell her she is just a victim and hero helping me live my best life. And she lied about my mother, lied about all these records. I'm going to show you what that monster did next. Now, you remember that clip we were listening to? All I did was talked about Stephen McNeil and Post Media, right? Now, in the letter from August 3rd, when I read that off to you earlier, what did I say? I only talked about McNeil and Post Media, consistent with the audio recording. It's the only thing that was talked about. When I got Kristen Holm's fucking notes, this is amazing. She said that I was pressured and tangential in that meeting. You can see how calm I was, that I was articulate, asking really good questions, and she couldn't answer anything and jumped right to severe abuse, knowing all this evidence existed. It is absolutely shocking. Right? But what she then said is that he kept going back to Stephen Harper and Bell Media. This is right in her notes. Go through that audio recording and see if that was ever mentioned. Either of them. Never. Not to anybody, anywhere. So why would Kristen Holm make up Stephen Harper and Bell Media and claim I was pressured and tangential? In that same recording, I say, Kristen, you know I said I was going to get a lawyer. Why are you doing this? Kristen Holm had to go out and make me look pressured and tangential on that record. So she had to go change words. So then it would be he said, she said. I say I only spoke about McNeil and Post Media. Well, she wrote down Stephen Harper and Bell Media, so I'm just crazy. See, I was so worked up in there. I didn't know what was talked about. So she could claim I was pressured and tangential, and then she can claim plausible deniability about McNeil and Post Media. Think about this. If she got one of them wrong, okay, but both of them? And she just happened to leave the ones out and lied about it. So here's the thing. Take all the complexity and put this aside. The woman never recorded how sick my fucking mother was at all, the extent of her disabilities. She lied about me being pressured and tangential. She lied about me talking about McNeil and Post Media. So, if she can't even get names right, how can you trust any of her record? This isn't a small mistake. This is a legal medical record where she's making a claim that I was pressured and tangential, and she's changing what we're talking about and then punishing me for it. And you'll see she tried to. So we're going to jump into the next part of this. Hey there, Scott George again, 902-220-9106. Alright, so we're talking about Kristen Holm and everything she left out of the record, her modifications and how she changed it. And covered up a violent sexual assault because she knew I was articulate. She knew she was in a lot of trouble. And her best bet was to claim plausible deniability. That's why she admitted me right away, and she went out and then changed a legal medical record to try to make me look pressured and tangential so she could make herself look like a victim who was just helping me live my best life. You think about how fucking sick that is. That she leaned in and said, I'm just helping you live your best life, and then went out and lied in a record. Slandered and fucking defamed me. You know what she did? She called my fucking mother, my sick, disabled mother. Didn't tell her about the abuse. She told my mother that I went to Halifax Regional Police and caused a bunch of issues for the police. There isn't even a statement from a single police officer, and she called my mother and lied to her about this. Didn't tell her about the sexual assault or the abuse. Didn't tell her about my book bag. Didn't tell her about me claiming I was falsely arrested or anything. She called her and said, Debbie, he was causing a bunch of issues, and he's just crazy. He's just making stuff up. We looked into it. She never looked into it. Admits she never seen any evidence. You hear her say it herself. She never seen a bit of evidence. Nothing. Never spoke to an officer. Nothing. So how can she know anything about anything? She completely called my mother and lied. Here's what my mother said. Oh, he's up on his computer and he goes for walks to his aunt's 3 times a day because my aunt is like 80 years old and I also assist her and help her, and I like to get out of the house. I've got a border collie. I got to take her for walks. It's 1 kilometer each way, so it's maybe 5 kilometers of decent exercise a day. That is good exercise. And that's basically it. And she said to call his Aunt Glenda. So, Kristen Holm calls my Aunt Glenda and immediately, like, he's okay. Every single question listed, like, Kristen, like, you need to sit down and actually have a proper conversation. Like, something really bad happened. He's completely okay here. Completely fine. And my aunt's like, she was really nasty to me on the phone. She didn't want to hear anything I had to say. Like, she was super dismissive. My sick, disabled mother said, call Glenda. Glenda says he's completely fine. Kristen Holm goes back to my mother and says, Debbie, she's saying he's completely fine. Well, Debbie says, well, he must be sick. Just lock him up. Right there in her own words, I didn't do anything. I'm up on my computer. So I should be locked in a mental institution. Right there. Kristen Holmes seen her fucking opportunity to take that and lie about it. To take advantage of my sick, disabled mother. That's right, lied to her. Didn't record the extent of her disabilities. Didn't record any of it. Now, here's the really sick fucking part. So, I'm in the hospital. I get out. My mother brings me a paper. They found a fucking 17-centimeter tumor in her fucking stomach, the size of your fucking fist. That's what was making her so fucking sick. My mother had tried to kiss me weeks before. She had called me a fag and stuff. That family members were like, oh my God, what's going on, Scott? I'm like, I don't know. She's really sick. So I had her go to the fucking hospital again and get a scan done. You'll see the date of the scan says August 2022. She didn't, and I was admitted by the 5th. I obviously could have known nothing about it. I never knew about it until I got out of the hospital. My mom's like, oh, you were only in there 3 days. I was in there for 10 days. When I was in the hospital, my mother fell and crushed the garbage can, bruised all up her fucking side. Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm never recorded how sick she was or that I pleaded with her to please be reasonable. Never recorded her mental or physical disability or anything like it. But what's really important, back in that audio recording, there were 2 individuals in that room, Beth and Megan. You'll hear her speak about them. All right? And I want you to hear this.
You talked about the struggles with your mom and caring for your mom.
You talked about the struggles with your mom and caring for your mom, that she never recorded any of it or the extent of the disabilities. Do you want to know what Kristen Holm wrote? That I sometimes cooked and cleaned. As I'm cleaning her ass and vagina, wiping piss and shit up off the floor, taking her to all of her fucking appointments. She's completely dependent on me with serious fucking disabilities. So Kristen Holm could diminish me as a man and attack me and justify her fraud and abuse. as she covered up a violent sexual assault. She's seen two retards she could take advantage of and abuse, and knew the system wouldn't do anything to try to help them no matter the evidence. So she knew she could go out, change those words, she could deny me a lawyer, she could lie about it, she could drug me, she could humiliate me.
For your recording. 902220201 est ton appel. After tone, please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey everybody, Scott George here again. This is another episode of The Wolf and the Neural Network. I think we're on fucking 14 or 15 now. I lost count. I'm going to give up trying. Because I don't fucking care. I wouldn't have to make these stupid fucking videos if it wasn't for like Shelley Muse. God fucking damn it. Alright. So, I'm out of the hospital here. Now, the extent of Kristen Holmes' fraud doesn't stop here. So, she makes me take this risperidone drug, okay? Now, I want to read something to you. I'm going to get the exact fucking printout. I want to speak to all you men out there. I want to show you what this monster did to me. Tell me she's helped me live my best life as she's defrauding a record, humiliating my fucking mother and everything. I want to read something about risperidone. How often does sexual dysfunction occur with risperidone? Between 40 and 70% of men taking risperidone experience sexual dysfunction. Study 150 to 70% incidence. Sexual dysfunction depending on the dose. 43% chance of erectile dysfunction. Now, I want to read the next part to you. Sexual dysfunction may appear quickly. Some patients develop it within days to weeks. She forced me to take that drug under threat of injection for 10 days. At least 7. It can be long-lasting. Even after stopping risperidone, recovery can take weeks or months. So she's going to pump me full of a fucking drug that can make you suicidal, cause all the symptoms, and fucking chemically castrate you because I asked for my basic rights and to talk to a fucking lawyer. And I'm unreasonable. So she could prosecute some man. You gotta stop. Guys, if I said there's a 50-50 chance you're gonna be chemically castrated, how funny is that? You're gonna say, I think we should sit down and just have a talk before you do something like that, you fucking monster. Right? No. She had to cut my dick off. She had to fucking, because she knew she was being challenged. Watch what she did next. So my mother has this giant fucking tumor, right? I'm having all these troubles with her. I have nobody to help me. Her family doesn't give a fuck about her. So now I got to deal with my mother who said this to this woman, had me locked up. All this abuse I've suffered over the years and stuff because of her. I've dealt with it. I've dealt with her bipolar. I've taken the abuse. I could be sitting there just watching a science show. She'd come out, what are you watching? I'd be like, I'm just watching a science show. Oh, you're fucking retarded like your fucking father. And just walk away and you're like, lawyer, what the fuck just happened? That's right. Pissing and shitting on the floor. Imagine this, everybody. I told Kristen Holm this, okay? I said, Kristen, she stood there, and this isn't the first time, looked at me, pissed on the floor, and said, what's it to you? And now, she's got this tumor in her stomach, and I have to look her in the eye. All this abuse, me doing everything I fucking possibly can, and now I'm humiliated because of this. I told Kristen Holm my biggest concern, and I spoke to my family doctor about this, was that they were going to use my mother against me. Or hurt her or do something to her, as Kristen Holm used her against me. Took her disabilities and everything out of context, put her in danger, lied about it, humiliated me, covered up a violent sexual assault. So, by September, my mother was so fucking bad she couldn't stand up and I didn't have any help. And I want to give you an example of the kind of people that I have around me, okay? Because I want you to all know what Kristen Holm really fucking did. And she knew what she was doing, and she hoped for this outcome, hoping she would cause damage, because that would degrade me further, maybe lead to a break that monster could exploit. So, we're going to end this call, and we're going to come back to this. Hey there, everybody. Scott George again. I think this is number 16. My phone number is 902-220-9106. We're talking about how sick my mother was, the abuse and fraud these individuals engaged in. Okay, so my mother was so sick she was laying on the floor. Somebody close to the family showed up with their friend, And they sat at our fucking table and watched me for 15 minutes try to get her up off the floor and never offered to help at all. They came here to use our phone and use our fucking services, and these were people that were supposed to be closest friends. And I was like, I finally got Mom up off the floor. No help. They sat there and fucking watched me. I got her up off the floor, and she's all confused and stuff, and starts trying to take her blood. And it was horrible. And I said, guys, can you take us down to emergency? No, we can't do that. I was like, can you please just take us down? I can't afford a fucking ambulance. We just can't, like, no, we can't. And I'm like, okay, well, you're coming down in the morning, like, can you just take us down? Because, like, I got to take her somewhere. They're coming down, they're like, no, but we're still going to come down and use your phone and stuff. As they watched a woman roll around on the fucking floor and did nothing to help her. Because these are the kinds of people in my life. And you're saying, where's her family and everything? Where's... You don't understand the kind of family that I grew up in, okay? They don't care about other people like that. I'm an oddity out of this, okay? That's why I knew she needed somebody, because nobody else was going to come for her, and the ones that would have were vultures. So, my mother's this sick, and everything's happening. So, remember about Kristen Holm, and I went in about Dan Kinsella? HRP decided to do a historic, never-before-performed vote of no confidence against the chief. That's right. I think like over 84% voted, 96.6 or something voted no confidence. Like it was a overwhelming thing. And this just so happened just after this. And you know these Emmett contracts match his start date as the chief of police and everything. And obviously they knew I was walking down to Halifax Regional Police that day. They fucking entrapped me. And Dan Kinsella knew about it but would benefit from the fucking fraud and not bringing this out. He knows he's legally fucking culpable for the false arrest and the abuse, because they all knew about it, but not if he doubles down and keeps sending RCMP. So this entire time, as I'm trying to deal with this, they kept sending RCMP to my house. This would have been Jessica Welch, Chad Sanford, Justin Hall, and each time I'd say, hey, can you please let me open a case and stuff, and they refused to allow me to open a case. You'll see why, because they had to cover up for this serious fraud. So, by November, I think it was like 17th, my mother would be admitted to the hospital for a surgery, and she would never come home after that. She would be in the hospital for a couple months. Now, after her surgery and stuff, I was going in there as much as I could, doing as much as I could to go see her. She was having mental issues and stuff, and I went in, and I was walking to see her. Like, I had to walk, and I had to spend money and stuff. Like, I had blisters all over my feet, and I'd go spend hours with her a day. And she was having mental issues and stuff. And a staff member came and said, Scott, I need to speak with you. She's like, can you please come aside with me? And before we do this next video, I want to just pause this, okay? Hey there, Scott George again. This is another episode, or this is like fucking 17 video. 902-220-9106. So, the woman at the hospital took me aside, and she's like, Scott, how long have you been dealing with these mental issues, and have you been dealing with this alone? Like, one of our nurses recorded that one of your family members came in and they were not nice to your sister at all. And in fact, they're like, it was extremely inappropriate. They're like, have you been dealing with this all alone? Because we've noticed you in here. And she's like, just tell me how long. And I fucking broke down and I fucking cried for like 10 minutes. I was like, too long. There is objective medical records, dozens of home care, her own doctor saying how sick she was. There's a fucking tumor in her fucking stomach. These people are saying... Oh, the phone cut off. Hi there, this is Scott George again. This is another video entry. My phone number is 902-220-9106. So we were talking about my mother being in the hospital and how hard it was on me. So as she's in the hospital and I'm walking to see her, RCMP came to my house terrorizing me and threatening me, and I begged them to allow me to open a case number. I spoke with Jessica Welk. I told her about my GPS being set down there. I told her about the violence and everything. And you will see all of their notes note how completely cool, calm, and collected I am. They spoke with my family and everything. As I'm standing there begging them to please let me open a case. And they refused over and over and came to my house threatening me. We're going to try to find a reason to charge you. Like threatening me over and over and over as I'm walking to see my dying mother in the fucking hospital. Asking, hey, I was violent, sexually assaulted. I got serious evidence of serious abuse. please stop this and let me do this. So the police showed up at my house several different times as I'm going to see my mother, and I have no help, nothing, like nobody. And you're saying, Scott family, this, you must have done something to deserve it. I never did, I promise you. I like to think that I try to be a pretty decent person. I even volunteer my time. You can go look into my history. I don't have a history with violence. I don't humiliate people. I'm not racist or anything like that. And I can guarantee you, if you ask anybody in this community, if they were to say, if you ask Scott for help, do you think he'd help you? 100%. And they fucking know it as well. I haven't done anything to anybody. I try to be a good person. I try to help people. I try to keep an optimistic, positive outlook, right? Because how else are you going to go through your life? Right? Like, sometimes bad things and stuff happen, but you've got to try to make them work. You've got to try to do better things. Right? Sometimes you can take something negative and turn it into something positive because there's nothing else that you can do with it. That's the kind of person that I am. People down in Ecom and stuff, they are not like that. They are miserable. They are hateful. They are so scared of themselves. Right? They don't go out into the world and have to face all of these things, so they can create delusions of themselves about how they're just a hero for yelling at people, and it doesn't even make sense. It's like a whole different world of people. And I'm just not like that. So you'll find I get along with everybody. Right? Because I like that. I like people and stuff. And I like getting along with people because you can laugh. You can carry on. You can learn from people. Time passes. You build memories. Right? Like, I love people. And I like being social and all these different things. But unfortunately, not all people are like that. Right? So anyways, I digress on that point. I guess I kind of just want people to know a bit about who I am. Because they say I'm antisocial. I was like, not at all. Like, I love people. I'll go out dancing and I'll do whatever, right? Like, I like people. So, you know, I'm walking to see my mother and everything here. So, we're going to jump forward to January 29th, was it, 2023. This would be the morning that my mother had passed. Now, you see, I did multiple videos on this. I did a review, and it was released on the 17th of February, 2022. After she had passed, Tim Houston had showed up at the hospital. Premier Tim Houston, Nova Scotia, showed up at the hospital. And we had a brief interaction and everything like that. That night, that morning, because it was about 1 a.m. in the morning, neighbors reported lights in my house, break and enter. When my family member was in the line at Tim Hortons, somebody came up to them and started talking about being from CSIS or something. Now, these parties never talked to each other. I never told them about the premier showing up. They both came to me the next day and were like, Scott, something happened. Like, there was lights in your house. That's one person who never talked to each other. So these are all 3 independent reports. I've taken those to the police and asked them to please investigate, and they wouldn't investigate or do anything, knowing there were additional witnesses and everything like that. Because Tim Houston had shown up because they knew the abuse that these people had committed. And I'd been continuously sending emails to this thread, and they knew about my mother being sick and everything because I was very fucking clear about it on that email thread. So they knew about that. Right? So they showed up to try to control that situation in the way that it looked. They knew they had Kristen Holm on record lying, slandering, and defaming me. Look at it. She removed exactly what I said in that email. Reasonably, you could say that somebody contacted her and told her exactly what to hide, or she's seen that and knew exactly what to hide. Either way, she still committed fraud, right? And now you got the premier and everything showing up. My mother died. I'm all alone in the world. What am I going to do? Right? They've got all the power in this situation. They could have solved this, but now they've got these abusers from Nova Scotia Health Authority. So what can Tim Houston say? Well, he's just schizophrenic. He's making it up. He's just a liar. It's whatever Tim Houston says happened that morning, right? Scott George is just a retard. He's just a piece of shit. Everything he says is just a lie. How convenient, right? Yet I've got all this evidence of all the abuse. Okay, we need to end this call and we'll get back to another.
Please record your message. To leave a callback number, press 5. Au signal, veuillez dicter votre message. Pour laisser un numéro de rappel, faites le 5.
Hey there, Scott George again. Another episode, another call. And so, we were talking about my mom and stuff being in the hospital, Tim Houston and everything showing up and why this is important, right? So they can control the complete narrative. Doesn't matter what I say. They're just going to lie, cheat, and steal because they would now have to go and face Kristen Holm, Shantae Blackburn, Nancy Murphy, and these obvious records and this obvious fraud. So they're going to keep attacking me because if not, this is just getting worse and worse and worse. So they're going to keep attacking me. So I would walk down to Halifax. Now, remember the video that I made? I believe it was July 10th, 2025, and it was detailed about the false arrest March 13th. That's right. So that's what the police tried to use against me and everything with Hannah Marie Weimer. Said I was arrested then, so I must have been crazy. You just seen all this fucking evidence of all the abuse that happened before that, including with those officers who were responsible for the false arrest. That's right. So that's why Corey Bushell and that fucking fraud Trevor Allen left that out, because look at all this evidence of this massive abuse before that. All the evidence of the wolf and the neural network. The literally audio recordings of Kristen Holm fucking abusing me and lying in her fucking record, and jump forward to March 13th so they could leave out all this other abuse and evidence and try to use that as justification, knowing then that Nova Scotia Health Authority used these fabricated records by these individuals to try to condemn me and execute me again on that day. That's right. So I got arrested that day. Hannah Marie, go watch the video. Hannah Marie Weimer denied me a lawyer. That's right. I told the young guy that there were audio recordings of Kristen Holm and the abuse, told him about the sexual assault and stuff, and he literally said, I think we need to stop this right here. He said, are you audio recording right now? And I said, maybe. He said, I think we need to stop this right now. 2 members of Nova Scotia Health Authority then came and talked to me, said, you're not allowed to record. I said, actually, I am, right? This is covered under the one-party consent law and 183 in the criminal code. Can I please see your policy? And they said, we don't have a policy. I said, I'm not allowed to record out here in a common area. That could be a problem, but in our one-on-ones, I am absolutely legal and entitled to that. They said, no, we're not. And if you try to record, we're going to have that physically removed for you. It's for our privacy. It's like, now, you can go to the CMPA website and see, and go to the criminal code yourself. It is absolutely your right to record the doctor, and you don't have to tell them. They're not allowed to record you. They have to tell you. They made this entirely up. She knew I was asking for a lawyer. She knew I was sitting there completely calm, as per her own records, and I was a technical expert. Hannah Marie Weimer didn't record the violent sexual assault or any of the abuse happened. That's right. And in fact, she left it all out, tried to copy their record from August 2022. And then she looked right in my face. And this is really important. As she denied me a lawyer, she lied about it, never even recorded that I asked for a lawyer or that I asked for it to be audio recording so she could claim plausible deniability, because she knew there'd be a record of what she did and what she said, and then she would be held to account. So she needed to be able to control the record. She could lie to everybody else so she could claim plausible deniability. Look at the evidence. So Hannah Marie Weimer looked at me and said, obviously you're making this all up. So I'm obviously making up a sexual assault, all this abuse. You hear the audio recordings yourself. You see all of the evidence. I'm a technical expert. Now you will ask Hannah Marie Weimer what it was I was obviously making up. Hannah, provide one date, one example. You have all these examples. Come on, provide it in detail. She won't be able to answer a basic question, because that morning, Hannah Marie Weimer executed me. She knew exactly what she was doing. That officer said, Scott, why do you think they're going to admit you? He's seen the evidence on my phone and stuff and was like, you're really calm and everything. And I said, because they're facing multi-million-dollar litigation. She'd have to file a complaint against that director. They're going to have to testify in court. So, but if I'm guilty, none of that has to happen. It's the same thing that Nancy Murphy and Shantae Blackmore did. That's right. So when we went into the room and I asked him to stay after she said I was, and came back and said I was admitted, I looked at him and said, I told you so, and I laughed, and he literally looked at her and said, I need to speak to you outside for a minute. Because any person would be shocked about what she was doing. Look at the evidence I have. She can't answer a basic question. She specifically removed any reference to a lawyer or recording so she could claim plausible deniability. When multiple of them came to me and I asked for a policy, and she denied me and didn't explain my rights in that case, because she completely fucking abused me, because she knew she'd have to file a complaint against that director, but knew she could just get away with it and abuse me. Think about this. Hannah Marie Weimer then says she went and talked to another doctor who verified it, and she took her fabricated record to that doctor. But let's go a little bit further here. I got to call back.
Call has been forwarded to an automatic voice messaging system. 902202013 is on the phone. Votre appel a été transféré à un système de traitement de la voix. 9022
Hey there, Scott Yours again, 902-220-9106. All right, so we're talking about Hannah Marie Weimer. And so you've got all this evidence here, right? So you could ask Hannah Marie Weimer for a single example. Now this guy is so concerned watching her act like this, right? And you're like, why would he be concerned but not her? Because he had nothing to lose in the situation. She had to condemn some man. She's seen some man and she was just going to control him. I was at Halifax Regional Police. I was at CSIS, caused no problems. And they said he might go somewhere and cause a problem. Well, I didn't. And you even arrested me, tortured me, slandered, defamed me, and then in your own record talked about how calm I was. So how does that make sense? It doesn't. She needed to do that to me, to humiliate me, destroy my life, and claim she was a victim and hero. Well, she denied me my fundamental rights. Well, Hannah Marie Weimer will now hide behind those same rights that she denied me. Well, says she's a victim because I made an email going through a sexual assault and all this abuse after she called me a liar. You got to really stop and appreciate what kind of fraud works at Nova Scotia Health Authority. But here's my point. So Nancy Murphy and Chantier Blackmore also work in that same emergency department. Okay? So that means she knows these people. So she said they just wouldn't lie, or she would have to testify against Chantier Blackmore and Nancy Murphy. It could even be that she went to either one of those, and they knew they fabricated the record and retaliated further, right? But I'm just a retard, and if I ask those questions, I'm just paranoid. These people are some very sick fucking human beings. Look what they did next. So, I would go and file complaints with CPSNS, which is my right, against these individuals, and you see the evidence that I have. It is amazing, right? File the complaint against Nancy Murphy. Within days, I get served by a bailiff at my house. He's like, I don't know what's going on. This is weird. He's like, I've never had it done like this before. He's like, yeah, they called me up and said, come get this from Nova Scotia Health Authority, saying I'm being trespassed from their properties. Gave the 3 copies, a yellow, white, and pink copy. It's all filled out by the same person, including the witness signature, stating I was at Nova Scotia Health Authority and that they read that policy to me and that I'm being trespassed and did something wrong. I live 151 kilometers away from Nova Scotia Health Authority. I never said I was going to Nova Scotia Health Authority. At no time at Nova Scotia Health Authority, even when they falsely arrested and tortured me, their own records indicate how calm I am. There is no record of being erratic or causing issues anywhere, or saying I was going to go to Nova Scotia Health Authority in any capacity and cause anybody a problem. And now they are fucking banning me from the property, making false claims that I was there, because they have to cover up for the sexual assault, the serious abuse of these individuals. So now they need to slander and defame me to the police, so that they can justify what they did and justify further retaliation, so that the police don't investigate the serious abuse. I swear to you all, I never went near there. I live so far away. Never said I was going to go there. And then okay, everybody, so I just want to add this piece in so that we can clean up what happened before in the video, because I just missed a couple pieces that are really important to add some extra context and stuff here. So, remember how I said Tim Houston showed up at the hospital the morning my mother died? Why this is important is because when Tim Houston became Premier, he personally installed Karen Oldfield as the director of Nova Scotia Health Authority, stating it was basically his friend that he installed. That's right, so he had direct access to the top of Nova Scotia Health Authority, so they all had shared interest in making me look guilty and retaliating. So is it any wonder that he showed up and Karen Oldfield and these parties are calling me a liar and having me trespassed and covering up a violent sexual assault and abuse? No, it's because they are directly associated and they all stand to lose from this, so they're all going to pretend that I'm a liar. That's right. Now, the other thing we need to go back to is the dates of November 19th and these police instances and everything, and why Dan Kinsella and Jim Perrin is so important. Because you go back to November 19th, 2019, and you will see that Dan Kinsella states there will be an apology for the black community regarding street checks, right? Jim Perrin would get transferred to Irving Shipbuilding because of the street checks thing, essentially, right? Not fully it, but essentially. I get an email about a job for the government. Torstar would shut down its Halifax office, while Torstar and Post Media were under investigation for those while Harjit Sajjan, the defense minister, would have been in Halifax at almost the exact same time. And so, this is where it's important to again state, look at those Emmett contracts. They match the start date of Dan Kinsella, and here you've got Harjit Sajan right there in Halifax, all these events happening on this day, the apology to the black community, Jim Perrin being transferred, me getting an email. That's right. Well, Harjit Sajan signed off on those EMIC contracts himself for that household, and so Jody Thomas. Harjit Sajan directly signed off on the EMIC contracts. Now, my phone's GPS location was set to 9330 Stillwater, Nova Scotia. You can see these EMIC contracts match the dates. That's right. And then you see the psychological warfare and EMIC operating in Nova Scotia, confirming they were in Nova Scotia and were in fact working with the military. Well, I have military IP addresses connecting to my systems. Right? So what you're seeing is this round cycle, and now you're seeing that Harjit Sajan himself signed off on those EMIC contracts along with Jody Thomas, which he knew about that household, he knew about those contracts and reasonably what was going on, which is why the date of November 19th, 2019 is so important, because it shows that Harjit Sajan was in Halifax. I get the email, Jim Perrin gets transferred, Dan Kinsella says there will be an apology, Torstar shuts down its Halifax office while they're under investigation for collusion regarding Post Media. Do you see the consistency here? And then you can actually link that address back to another investigation regarding Post Media and possibly David Pecker becoming the executive back in like 2016, 2017, which overlaps with the Mark Norman events. Then tells you reasonably if that address was used in one operation, it was likely used in another, and since they're using spyware, it's likely that spyware also targeted Mark Norman, which is why they did the inquiry into spyware when I was arrested in there with Kristen Holm, and that's why you see David Fraser and stuff on TV. That's why it all lines up, because just weeks before that, the other person implicated was just cleared of the charges, and then our CMP stated they'd used spyware. That's right. It is massively consistent, actually. And here's the thing, everybody, about my GPS and everything, right? You can just do some basic math. You can take where I live and just draw a circle where it intersects with that household, and then work out the radius and say, what's the random chance that GPS would have an anomaly and just land in the middle of that house? And it's about, at the very bare minimum, it's about 1 in 54 million. You're about 33% more likely to win the lottery than I am to be wrong. Right? But once you factor in all these contracts and everything and the additional contacts and the fact I've got military IP addresses that were confirmed by Irving Shipbuilding in these parties, that tells you that I'm right. And there's also existing CSIS case numbers and stuff, right? But here's the other part too, though. So you hear in the audio recording with Kristen Holm, and this is really important, okay? I state that Kristen, I actually made a Freedom of Information request because I told her I seen a lawyer and he told me to make a Freedom of Information request, and I begged him not to make me do it. He said, you have to do it. I made the Freedom of Information request. I got it back. I asked him, please just go talk to these people. Like, we got to figure something out. He's, no. I get my Freedom of Information request back. The day I get it back, Kevin Mooney steps down from Irving. He was the president and CEO. Now, if you go back again, the day after I send my letter, Stephen McNeil resigns, right? And I gave them 6 months. That jumps forward to February 5th and 6th. Stephen McNeil and Kevin McCoy, they then president and CEO of Irving Shipbuilding, would step down. Now again, I get my Freedom of Information request back. On that very day, another American CEO steps down. Now, we're going to talk about why that is in the issues with what's happening globally, right? Where Canada is now considered some sort of national security threat and such. Something else was also going on back then, and we're going to discuss that more later on. Okay, so I just wanted to add that additional context in. I think I got most of it. But what we need to also talk about here is that you'll note inside this video, you will hear that the mailbox is full. That tells you multiple things. It tells you this is an active mailbox and that I've made it reach the limit, which was partly intentional. So we could see if it gets emptied or not. You see all these videos, me calling this number. It's impossible that I haven't filled it up by now if it's an inactive number, which tells you Shelley Muse is either just deleting them or she's listening to them and not taking any action because she knows she's guilty. Reasonably, she's going through and trying to pick out things that make her a hero and victim. Say, look, he's upset here, this or this. And well, she actually removes the content, but it's unignorable. The moment I call back and that mailbox isn't full, that tells you very well Shelley Muse for 279 days, what has she been doing? Except covering up a violent sexual assault and all this abuse. That confirms exactly what I said about Kurt Wallace and Shelley Muse. They are 100% lying about this. They're deleting evidence while they cover up for the violent sexual assault. Shelley Muse is an absolute fraud, a dirty cop, and this is her role in this process, and she knows it, and she knows she's got caught. She's going to trap me in that room and then take that record she made and give it to Daddy so they could all get off, and that's what she's doing right now. I'm going to tell you all that's not her role. CTV, CBC knows that's exactly her role in this. None of them would ever trust Shelley Muse. with their families. They know exactly what she's doing. 279 days and she's deleting the phone calls and everything of a violent sexual assault, allowing predators to run free, and she's in the special victims unit. Oh yeah, Daddy knew exactly what he was getting when he installed her there. Complicit, complacent, compliant fraud, and I am paying the price for it. So at least we have the information now and I can call her out. You already knew she was doing it, but for us to be able to quantify it so well, Shelley Muse is so beyond dirty. It is just fucking amazing. It is just amazing. It isn't even a question of if, it is how many. Right? And how many does CTV, CBC, and these parties let these people get away with watching these dirty fucking cops like this, right? And you provide them this kind of evidence. It's disgusting. But that just tells you that this isn't the first time these parties have covered up massive abuse and sexual assault and violence and torture and humiliation like this. This is what CTV and CBC are paid for. Okay? And that's going to be the hard part that you're going to have to digest. And we are going to cover that later because I have some pretty fucking incredible evidence. Alright everybody, I need to do another little section about Kristen Holm. This one's really critical. Because in her report to Douglas Grant, and in her official report, she made this claim, and I need to read this to you. I assessed Mr. Jors on August 3rd, 2022. On assessment, his presentation was very similar to that in the ER. He's 100% convinced that events were real and connected and related to himself. He did not think his mind may be playing tricks on him. He denied sleep disruption or significant. It just goes into the rest here, right? So she's saying I said this was 100% about me. What was 100% about me? You see all the evidence. She admits she didn't have no evidence, didn't talk to the police, doesn't know anything about anything. And you see all this other evidence of all these other events that she knows nothing about. So how could she make an assessment or statement like that? Because she needed it to make me look delusional. So here's what I can show you. If you go back to December 23rd, 2021, when I submitted the massive security review, also involving Irving Shipbuilding, you will see directly in it, introduction. I'm not saying this was all about me, or this was to deal with me or about me. I suspect this was a general plan that spiraled out of control. I'll highlight how my role in it was manipulated and how that seems to evolve with time. Does that sound like someone saying it's 100% about them? Literally the exact opposite, and this would have been, what, 9 months beforehand? Well, at the Irving Shipbuilding, I literally told them that I'm implementing what's called a non-zero reasoning, the way to deal with this. So I'm aiming for a 70% accuracy, and then we're going to assign lesser events, only 1%, and then we're going to increase them. I said, here's the methodology I'm going to employ, which is why I was able to beat them and get all this evidence that you see inside of this video, because I actually applied a scientific method where I didn't just assume anything. I then actually ordered all the information, put it in a Excel document so that it could be objective, and ordered by the date so that we could sit down and have a proper talk about this. That's a responsible thing to do. Kristen Holm didn't have dates on something, or the police didn't, they'd be reprimanded big time, right? But me, it's too much. And then if you come with dates and ordered information. So let's give you another example of this. So when I submitted the Wolf and the Neural Network on July 11, 2022, I want to read to you what I wrote that day. For research purposes, attaches a global security review in the form of a bunch of data points that's wide open for interpretation. But also, a cute dog. Within the data set, I found there is a consistent pattern that supports a very crazy and serious set of events that supports that this was a full-on attack on democracy. Basically, there was a predator, multiple predators on your doorstep, and they came for all of us. For all of us. Black, white, brown, man, trans, gay, rich, poor, all of us. It's all there. Jeff Bezos, Donald Trump, Cambridge Analytica, AMI, Post Media, Catch and Kill, Pegasus, Russia, Dick Chibbles, police, billionaire, feuds, racism, bonds, a pandemic, charmed, gay bros, Pope, spies, sex, scandals, a plane incident, a few peckers. All for you to build your own story as to make your own choices and interpret how you want. Well, this is all without a lot of crazy personal events, but I don't have time to finish or give a detailed opinion. This is a lot. So there you go. Does that sound like somebody who's forcing it down their throat? Is that someone saying, look, here's a bunch of data, let's talk about this appropriately? That's right. So I ordered it. I was respectful, responsible. I then said, I'm going to the police station. We need to talk about this abuse. At no stage at Urban Shipbuilding or with Kristen Carey Lynn Holm did I ever say 100%. That's it. I don't know what she's saying. My wallet was stolen. Right? I did make a Freedom of Information request. The police said it was part of something ongoing. So who do I go to but the fucking police? Kristen is fucked. Right? I'm going to show you how fucked she is. To show you what this pathological liar did. And in fact, I'll let you fucking listen to it for yourself. So, when Kristen Holm had left, I talked to Megan, and I straight up said, I'm not the protagonist. This isn't all about me. I've said that. Listen.
the research solution at Top End. I worked at Downtown Housing, I worked at the shipyard. I've done all the correspondence. I literally have the Excel file with all the dates. And it's like, I've said in everything you can see it, like, I never said I was the protagonist.
Never said I was the protagonist.
I said around me, I said the opposite. I said, like, very clearly, like, I don't know what's going on.
There you go. Very clearly said it again because I didn't believe it, and I'm sitting there saying, why aren't they looking at evidence? Why are they being so irrational? Because Kristen Carey Lindholm, from the very beginning, knew she made critical mistakes and had to make me look like I was delusional. Even though I never said anything was 100% about me, I said I want a due process and to sit down and properly talk about this. And you can hear that through the entire recording. Kristen Carey Lindholm fabricated the entire fucking record to cover up for the serious fucking abuse. Like, seriously, this goes way out and beyond fucking malpractice. This is a violent, delusional predator and fraud. A pathological fucking liar. This is a danger to you, me, society, and the integrity of that mental health program. To allow something like that to go on with that kind of evidence. You will arrest and charge this fucking...
Sorry, there is no more room to record messages. To leave a callback number, press 5. Désolé, il n'y a plus d'espace pour enregistrer.
Well, I can't leave any more messages for this mailbox, so we're going to have to do the rest online, right? Good enough, so it's not going to be interrupted. Good. Alright, so where were we with this fucking mess? So I get served by a bailiff. That's right, and had I gone to the hospital in those 9 days to take my aunt there, they would have just arrested me. And what would RCMP said? You're just a retard liar. They said I had schizophrenia and stuff, so I must have been there. I just don't know that I was, because I'm just a fucking retard, don't you know? It's that fucking Hannah Marie Weimer gets to cover up the abuse. She knew I reported it to her, so now they all get to cover up for that abuse, knowing I'm reporting a violent sexual assault, and now they're fucking having their security lie about it and forge papers to send to my house to attack me. That's right. Within 6 days, Dan Kinsella resigns. Within another 10, Dennis Daly states there will be an official apology from RCMP regarding the street checks. What coincidence, right? Yeah, these are some absolute units of abusers and sex offending frauds. So, you want to know what they did next? So, there's a lot more in here, right? But, so, I would have spoken with Corporal Stevens from CRCC investigation, and he completely fucking lied. You're going to see that in the video July 10th, right? So we covered a lot of that, right? So that's why I don't want to redo it. Here's the point. So, we jump forward to January 15th, 2024. I get the response from Douglas Grant, registrar from CPSNS. It was investigated by Crystal Morgan, apparently lead investigator. Now, what I'm about to show you is non-contestable evidence of serious fraud in 2 individuals covering up a violent sexual assault. Like, the evidence is so shocking and so clear that it fucking keeps me awake at night. I am so beyond fucking disgusted at these 2, and honestly, like, they need to be criminally charged. All right. So, I provided that fucking page where my book bag, it shows about my book bag 5 times to Crystal Morgan. She's a lead investigator. And Douglas Grant comes back and says, there's absolutely no evidence of it. It's right there on the first fucking page. Everything that I said, right down to the $40. Confirming my story about the rock, paper, scissors and everything. That's right. So Douglas Grant says there's no evidence. There it is right there. That's right. So, I get the response back, and this one's going to be really fucking important, okay? I want you to see what he did in regards to the sexual assault. He said, specifically, you allege Dr. Holm falsified documents and records. I showed you that she did falsify documents and records. I showed you that the audio recording doesn't match it. Guess what Douglas Grant didn't provide in the complaint? The audio recording. I called 5 or 6 times asking why they did that. Can they please add it? Nobody contacted me back because he knew it indicated exactly what I was saying, right? Then she wasn't a credible witness. He knew what he was doing here. Engaged in coercive torture by administering medication without your consent. I did not consent. You hear me saying this is cruel and unusual punishment and ask for basic rights in a lawyer, where she didn't even speak to anybody about anything and seen absolutely no evidence. She kept me awake over 24 hours, which is torture by international law. And if she was involved in anybody telling her what to do, which seems to be the case based off of that email, August 3rd, and her removing Stephen McNeil and Post Media from the record and changing it for Stephen Harper and Bell Media. That is absolutely her committing fraud in regards to this. But anyways, she did not investigate your allegation of sexual abuse while you were a patient at Mount Hope. She didn't. Didn't even record it. She called me a liar and said they would never do that because they know better. Labeled you retarded. Therefore, the RCMP would not investigate your complaint of sexual assault. So there they go. They know I'm saying Kristen Holmes said I covered it up. So it just never happened. There's all the evidence of it and everything. Guess who never investigated the violent sexual assault? Douglas Grant. The fucking registrar of CPSNS didn't investigate a fucking violent sexual assault and then mocked and fucking humiliated me here. These are some of the most dirty fucking people in our society. Denied you access to legal counsel. She did. You hear me saying I had told you I was going to get a lawyer and stuff. Because she did. She knew what she was doing and she went out and fabricated a record. She would ruin any type of legal defense that I would have. Engaged in reckless endangerment, fraud, and criminal and professional negligence. She absolutely did. Look at the criminal negligence associated with this. A fucking 55% average chance of sexual dysfunction. Look at what she did with the police, knowing the danger to me and my family. Look what she did, the fraud she engaged in. She is responsible for clarifying that record. And when Kristen Holmes clarifies that, she's going to have to clarify every other mistake that she made. And every single thing I'm saying is adding the fuck up, isn't it? That's right. So then Douglas Grant knows if he reprimands her, oh my God, this goes right back to Nancy Murphy who fabricated a record. Here's the evidence of Kristen Holmes changing the records. Covering up a violent sexual assault. Here's the records of his book bag. As Douglas Grant is lying about it. I send all this back to Douglas Grant, saying, Douglas, look at this. I called them, said, you guys, you can't do this. Nobody contacted me back. I was just a fucking liar. That's right, because Douglas Grant knew if he corrected his fraud in these records where he lied, like, he talks to Kristen Holmes in this and says that your mother had you admit it. That isn't what happened at all. Kristen Holmes called her and lied to her. She deferred to my aunt who said he's completely okay. You don't find that anywhere in the response here because that represents reasonable doubt and that would require some sort of action. So these frauds left this out, just like they did with my book bag and all the abuse so that they can leave it all out so Douglas Grant can pretend he's a victim and hero. He isn't a victim and hero. Neither is Crystal Morgan. They actively covered up a violent sexual assault and serious abuse. These are serious felonies, and I am seeking criminal charges for this. Right? But this gets even worse. So I call up to ask about a review because I noticed that they sent this personal and confidential information to Cox and Palmer. Now, I had contacted Cox and Palmer in regards to legal defense before all this had happened. They stated specifically they are a conflict of interest in regards to Irving Shipbuilding in Irving. That's right. Now, if you look, guess who works at Cox and Palmer? At the time, Stephen McNeil. I contact CPS and say, look, you're covering up a violent sexual assault. You left out my mother having a massive tumor. I'm calling them, saying, look at this tumor. Here's the medical records. Kristen Holmes lied about this. She lied about my mother. She abused me. All of this. They didn't include any of it and then sent their fraud to Cox and Palmer, who stated themselves are a conflict of interest and employ Stephen McNeil, a named abuser, which Kristen Holmes left out of her report specifically. So that Douglas Grant would engage with fraud specifically in regards to that individual. And now look at the issue that it's causing. A massive privacy breach with my abusers, where they're also covering up a violent sexual assault. So I call CPSNS and I speak to Suzanne Husbands. Sorry, I'm upset about this. You don't even know how upsetting this is to be sexually assaulted and abused and have frauds cover this all up. And then to know that Douglas Grant's going to say he's a victim and Kristen Holmes going to say they're victims after they did this. It's fucking disgusting. So, I call up Suzanne Husbands. I say, Suzanne, look, you got a serious problem here. They sent this stuff to people who are a conflict of interest and my named abuser. She replies, we're allowed to send this to a lawyer. I said, I didn't say that you weren't. I'd have fully expected that. However, I would have also expected an investigation, especially when you're talking about sexual assault and all this abuse. But I'm stating that there are conflict of interest, honey. They themselves said it and employ my named abuser. She then replied, oh, you didn't ask for a review, we're just closing the case. Never recorded any of that and pretended she was a victim because I asked her a hard, uncomfortable fucking question. None of them recorded that. I then made several calls to CPS-NS, and this needs to be clear. I have them all audio recorded. Calmly reading off the doctor's notes, playing the audio recordings of them lying, asking somebody to please contact me. I was violently sexually assaulted. So what Douglas Grant is going to do is he committed fraud. He absolutely covered up for a violent sexual assault. Look at Douglas Grant saying there must be systemic racism in the system somewhere. He's covering up for these dirty cops who stole historic apology to the black community, covering up for sexual offenses, all of this abuse, and it must be there somewhere. It is looking Douglas Grant in the face every single day. Douglas Grant committed full-blown systemic fraud to cover up for sexual violence and serious abuse by these individuals. And he's sitting there saying it must be somewhere else. That's right, because he doesn't have the capacity to face himself. Then he sent my fucking personal and confidential information to my named abusers, because he wanted to engage in a vicious social, economic, domestic terrorist attack where he absolutely committed fraud and covered up a violent sexual assault. He has no response for this. How can he say there's no evidence about my book bag when there it is? Here's Kristen Holm lying, changing these records, the audio recordings, which he left out. Here they're saying I was protesting. I was never protesting. Here's me showing you about the sexual assault. I have been consistent. That is his fucking responsibility to investigate that, but he gets to call me a liar, so it never happened. And then he gets to hide behind Cox and Palmer after he knew this happened. So he knew Hannah Marie Weimer had to be lying. Of course I asked for a lawyer. Of course I did. What was I making up? He knew how bad this was. And he knew Hannah Marie Weimer lied, Nancy Murphy lied, and now they got me on this record. I must have showed up at Nova Scotia Health Authority. So what do you think Douglas Grant's going to use? It isn't based on facts or evidence. He can't articulate a single point. He can't answer a basic question because it was an execution. I was absolutely executed by Douglas Grant, and he absolutely acted with malice and covered up a violent sexual assault. These were absolutely his duties to investigate. He knew exactly what he did and how to doctor that record and how to commit fraud. How did Kristen Holm know that she could do this without any type of repercussions? She literally, I went through and detailed every single thing that she did and provided reference. They didn't do any of that because they don't want a real review. Kristen Holm took her notes. I took her notes and showed how she changed the words. Like, it is fucking sick. It is full-blown fucking fraud. Douglas Grant would have to face that, but he knows the police want to get at me and all this different stuff, so he has to pretend he's a fucking victim. And he can just cover this all up and cause me further socioeconomic harm. Who cares if there's other sex assault victims? Who cares if they're fabricating records and abusing other people? Who cares if they're denying lawyers and mocking, humiliating people? Listen, they made me look retarded so they could justify their violence. Those are hate crimes, right? They're hate crimes. Kristen Holm gave me a drug that could cause suicide. She knew that the outcomes of her lying like that have severe psychological consequences, but she was okay with it as long as she was a victim and hero. As far as I'm concerned, she tried to have me fucking murdered. That's right, she was okay with that. And then she just said, see, he was crazy if I would have done something to myself. You think about how fucking sick that is. But even sicker, Kristen Holm was then given a chance to go back over her record, catch these issues about Bell Media and Post Media. And guess what? She didn't. Bell Media and Stephen Harper. So, how can she say, okay, Kristen, you said you made a little mistake on a legal medical record that led to somebody being tortured as you covering up a sexual assault. Let's say that's true. Then you went through your record and didn't detect it. So you lied there and then lied about other things in this other report and then didn't detect your already fraud compared to your notes. You didn't think you should show that his aunt said he was completely fine when his sucking disabled mother deferred to this woman? Of course she should. And so did Douglas Grant. He knows what that represents. And the moment he sees that, he's in a lot of trouble. He already formally reprimanded Nancy Murphy on a record for incomplete record, which means everything that happened then is consistent with what I'm saying. That's right. Douglas Grant absolutely covered up a violent sexual assault. He covered up violent abuse. And that's right, Nova Scotia Health Authority covered up the assault. They covered up the abuse. Chantier Blackmore absolutely fucking terrorized me as a person. You should have seen how much she loved it. They knew they were in serious fucking trouble. Nancy Murphy, Kristen Holm, the director at Nova Scotia Health Authority had me falsely arrested. You got Chantier Blackmore, you got serious abuse, so they all got together and had to ban me from the fucking property so they could lie to the police and make it look like I did something. Now you're going to ask any of these actual fucking human beings to articulate a single thing. You've got all this evidence. Where am I wrong? They're going to say, this is complex. What is complex about a violent sexual assault and asking for it to be recorded and anything? It's nothing. They're going to waive complexity over here, and that doesn't even make sense. Why did you not record my basic rights? Why would you lie about my mother? What is complexity to do with that? Because that's what fraud is, and that's what fraud does here. That's right, so they all got together, ganged up on me. Well, they can't answer basic fucking questions. What really occurred in this circumstance is, I want you to think about this. Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm was in a clinical setting, right? So was Chantier Blackmore, so was Nancy Murphy, so was Hannah Marie Weimer. Now, they're claiming I'm delusional and I don't have evidence. I have all this evidence. I'm a technical expert with this whole background. I can answer any questions you throw at me. They can't even articulate a single point where they had to lie in their records and abuse me and cover up all this fucking fraud. Sorry about that, I had a little technical issue. Anyways, so you've got all these people committing fraud here. That's right. I'm calling on RCMP to launch a full-scale investigation into the fucking misconduct at Nova Scotia Health Authority, the severe abuse, the humiliation, and the fraud, stating it is well documented. I'm asking RCMP to conduct a full-scale investigation into CPSNS. I'm stating Douglas Grant, Crystal Morgan absolutely covered up a violent sexual assault. There is absolutely no excuse for their behavior. I literally provided them the page with my book bag on it. You can see it myself. How can they see that? You got Douglas Grant making statements like there's absolutely no evidence, and there it is on the first page. That is full-blown fucking fraud. He's lying about Kristen Holm. He never included any of the abuse on the record because he committed fraud. I'm asking for criminal charges, and I'm asking that anybody found lying about any of this. I'm asking that Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm be registered as a sex offender. I am asking that Douglas Grant be registered as a sex offender. I am asking that Crystal Morgan be registered as a sex offender. I am asking that every individual from Nova Scotia Health Authority that was involved in this be registered as a sex offender. I'm asking for criminal charges of fraud for Nancy Murphy and Chantier Blackmore. I'm stating they engaged in hate crimes. This was reckless endangerment. This was criminal fraud. Look at her record. He states it's incomplete because they needed to justify destroying my life. And then with Chantier Blackmore, they committed hate crimes. They needed me to be retarded so that they could justify their abuse because they knew they could get away with abusing mentally ill people, apparently. They knew they could get away with abusing them, so they had to make it that way so they could abuse that person. Because they would abuse somebody like that because they believe they're lesser and don't deserve rights. That's why they never allowed me to have a lawyer, because I am just lesser. That is the abuse. I am just lesser. A sexual assault didn't happen. I am just lesser. That's right. I'm asking... So I'm asking for charges. I'm seeking criminal charges against Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm. I am seeking a minimum sentence of 15 years, stating I have additional evidence, and I'm not going to stop until she does spend probably the remainder of her days in a cage. So, I'm asking Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm be registered as sex offender. I'm asking to press criminal charges of criminal assault, criminal negligence. I'm stating they administered a noxious thing and it was forcible confinement. Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm tortured me under international law. This was coercive torture. You hear me? Ask her. Listen to the audio recording here.
So, like, you're going to make me take this until I say that didn't happen. Is that my
I'd like
understanding?
to see you be better.
That's right. That's coercive torture. She couldn't even outline a goal or anything specific. I just want to see you better. You're gonna... I'm asking CBC and Fifth Estate to conduct a full-scale investigation into the fraud and abuse at Nova Scotia Health Authority, citing incredible evidence of sexual violence and fraud. This is a culture of fraud and abuse. These are multiple individuals who sat down and conspired on how to lie about this, and they can't even answer a basic question. Do you think that Hannah Marie Weimer is going to face her violent delusions? No, neither is Kristen Holm. Here's what I was saying earlier about the clinical setting. I never lied. They lied, fabricated records. Look at their violence, look at their fraud, look at the negative impact this had. But they're saying I was delusional. Didn't they diagnose their own violent delusional psychosis? Yes, they did. Look at Kristen Holm. It is pathological lying. That's right. She diagnosed her own severe antisocial personality disorder. That is to state that Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm is a sociopath. She is a violent offender and she will offend again because it's what she knows. Now, I've put this violent offender in a box. I know what she is. I have additional evidence, and I am absolutely not going to stop. I know what that sociopath is. I've come across a couple of these kinds of people in my life. I know how to deal with them, and you don't look away from them. I'm calling on Health Canada to strip the medical license of Kristen Carrie Lynn Holm, stating very clearly she's covering up a violent sexual assault, retaliating, committed multiple hate crimes. Health Canada, I'm asking that you defer the case to RCMP for criminal prosecution. I am seeking at least 15 years in a federal prison. Now, with this Douglas Grant guy, now, let's go back. CTV, W5, I'm asking for a full-scale investigation into Nova Scotia Health Authority and CPSNS, the fraud and covering up violent sexual assault and all this abuse. Right? You got all this evidence, Douglas Grant. Why don't you go ask him a basic question? Ask him about the sexual assault. Ask him how funny it is. Ask him about all the evidence about deleting records. You already know what's going to happen. He's going to have to face it, and so is Cox and Palmer. I'm calling for fucking charges, and I want to press charges against these individuals. I'm calling for the federal government of Canada to strip the shipbuilding contracts from Cox and Palmer and McGuinness Cooper, citing incredible evidence of conflict of interest and their complicity and complacency in compliance with severe abuse and fraud in the Halifax community. And so are absolutely perpetrating it and sending the idea that this is all right while allowing these parties to drown out smaller parties. Right? Basically completely anti-competitive behavior while they lie about the abuse that they're engaged in and protect these kinds of predators at scale. I have contacted Cox and Palmer and asked them, please remove this or provide a comment on the conflict of interest and the privacy breach, asking them to also reach out to the Privacy Commissioner and explain the privacy breach. The same with this Valent Legal hack. They're required by law. David Fraser knows this. They have to report that kind of a breach. It shows it came from inside their network, which is the worst kind of breach. And they've done nothing about it. And they're all complicit in this. That is quite clearly within David Fraser's purview, as a privacy lawyer, right? They all know this is happening and they're all watching it happen at scale, but they all benefit from Daddy's money, just as Douglas Grant does, because guess who gives them donations? Daddy. Guess who gives Kristen Holm donations? Daddy. That's right. So if I'm guilty, they have to face Daddy, and they don't get donations, they don't get the jobs, they don't get the invites to these special dinner parties and everything. They don't get these special shipbuilding contracts for millions of dollars, which tells you that Cox and Palmer will absolutely assign a fucking dollar value, and so will McGuinness Cooper, to your life. And it say that this is what a sexual assault is worth, so then these people have billions of dollars, so they can just do thousands and thousands and thousands of sexual assaults. That's right. And here's the thing. If I were to say, okay, Cox and Palmer, McGuinness Cooper, let's say I sue them. Okay, you tell me the dollar amount, I'll go get it, and then we'll use that money to terrorize you and your families. You're going to say, how dare you? You can't do that. That's so unfair. What's the difference between you and I, other than you think you're the right kind of white? Your family deserves special rights because you're you. That's right. And none of these parties going to answer these basic questions, which is why David Fraser has been hiding from this, because he already knows he's complicit, complacent, and compliant, and he looks exactly like a Dan Kinsella on paper. He went on these news channels to help Daddy make it look like he actually would do something about these issues, straddle the fence, and then go on and talk about Dan Kinsella and all this stuff and act like he'd do something different. Look what happened here. Look at the evidence that was handed to him. Absolutely nothing. Did he even write a letter to the police saying this guy was assaulted? Why don't you just investigate this? That's right, they couldn't do that? That's right. So do you think David Fraser's going to look at all of his students in Dalhousie and tell them the value that he put on their lives and dignity? Absolutely not. He's going to hide from that question, even though he knows that he has an exact value. Because those contracts are a finite value divided amongst a number of people. That's right. So sexual assault, abuse, fraud, doesn't matter. Terrorize children for dollars, which they could get somewhere else. But you know what they can't get? Daddy telling them they're a good boy and a big hero. Right? So they could do it on their own. David Fraser's capable. But he needs Daddy telling him, oh, good boy, look, and Daddy leading the way and doing all these different things for him. That's right. And when the time comes and the wolves come for all of you, Cox and Palmer, McGinnis Cooper, Dave Fraser, these people, they are not going to be there for you. They are there for themselves. Look at the comments with David Fraser saying, what do you think this is, public school? I absolutely dominated him. 3 different reviews. Okay? They know how bad this is, and this proves to all of Canada they will lie, cheat, and steal, and they will watch these parties lie, cheat, and steal, and then they'll look at you and say they aren't part of that process. They weren't part of systemic racism. No way. It couldn't be. Here they all are helping cover it up and lie about it. Well, watching all this abuse occur, and they did nothing, but they're so much better, right? They're not. Okay, so I'm asking that the federal shipbuilding contracts be stripped from both of these companies, and that they be reallocated to smaller companies, driving more competition, maybe making a few more players. So maybe we'll have a couple players that can hold legal companies accountable when they cover up violence and sexual assault and misconduct and such as it appears these companies are, right? Maybe we need a little more competition so we can maybe get some decent people or some decent lawyers, or make you compete with yourselves if you think that you're not just going to get millions of dollars from daddy. So, let this be known to anybody else watching. If I find another law firm and associate in any way, like I say Burschel's LLP and these different companies, I'm stripping those contracts from you. That's right. If not, you individuals who did this can go to jail for 15 years, and that's the difference. Bet you won't go to jail, but you also don't want the financial penalty. But everybody else should pay for it except you people. You will strip the fucking contracts from these companies.